A week after burying my wife of 40 years, my phone rang. It was her doctor, his voice trembling in a way I had never heard before. He whispered, "Elijah, listen to me carefully. Do not eat anything in that house. Do not trust your daughter or her husband. Coretta did not die of a heart attack. Come to my office immediately or you will be next." What I discovered that afternoon didn't just break my heart, it turned a grieving widower into a man with nothing left to lose but his vengeance. My name is Elijah Freeman. I am 70 years old, and to the world I am just a retired mechanic holding onto a crumbling brownstone in a neighborhood that has grown too expensive for people who look like me. My daughter Gabrielle and her husband Hunter see a senile old man who shuffles when he walks and forgets where he put his glasses. They see a burden, a relic. What they do not see is the structural engineer who still holds 12 active patents on seismic isolation systems used in skyscrapers across this city. They do not see the man who quietly amassed a fortune while wearing thrift store cardigans. And they certainly did not see the storm that was about to descend upon them. Before I continue this story, please like and subscribe if you believe that family isn't about blood, but about loyalty. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. The last guest had barely stepped off the porch of our brownstone when the mask of civility dropped. I was sitting in my armchair, the leather worn soft by decades of use, clutching Coretta's favorite shawl. The scent of her lavender perfume still clung to the fabric, the only comfort I had left in a house that suddenly felt like a tomb. I looked up to see Hunter, my son-in-law, looming over me. He didn't offer a glass of water or a word of comfort. Instead, he thrust a clipboard into my face. "Sign here, Elijah," he said, his voice devoid of the somber tone he had used with the mourners just minutes ago. I adjusted my glasses, my hands shaking, not from age, but from a rage I was suppressing deep in my gut. I looked at the document. It was an authorization for immediate cremation. I looked up at him confused and hurt. "Hunter, you know Coretta wanted to be buried at the Greenwood Cemetery next to her parents. We discussed this for years. It is our tradition. We need to respect her wishes." Hunter rolled his eyes, a gesture of disrespect, so casual it felt like a physical slap. "Tradition is expensive, Elijah. Do you have $10,000 lying around for a plot and a casket? Because we certainly don't. Besides, cremation is more sanitary. We don't need a rotting body taking up space in the ground. It is better for everyone if we just get this over with quickly." I turned to Gabrielle, my own flesh and blood, hoping for an ally. She was busy checking her makeup in the hallway mirror, eager to wash the day's mourning off her skin. "Gabrielle, baby, tell him. Your mother wanted a service. She wanted to rest with her ancestors." Gabrielle didn't even turn around. She just sighed, a sound of pure exhaustion. "Daddy, please don't be difficult. Hunter is right. It is cleaner. Just sign the paper. We already called the service. They are coming in an hour to pick her up." I sat there, paralyzed by their callousness. They weren't just disregarding my wife's final wishes, they were erasing her. But before I could even process the violation, the doorbell rang again. I expected a neighbor with a casserole or perhaps the pastor coming to offer a final prayer. Instead, a man in a sharp navy suit walked in holding a laser measuring device. Hunter greeted him with a firm handshake, the kind he never gave me. "Come on in, Brad. Sorry about the gloomy atmosphere, but business is business." I stood up, my knees popping, feeling like a stranger in my own living room. "Who is this?" Hunter turned to me, a smirk playing on his lips. "This is Brad from Sterling Realty. Since we are handling affairs today, we figured we should get a valuation on the brownstone. Now is the perfect time to sell." I felt the blood rush to my ears, a roaring sound that drowned out the ticking of the grandfather clock. "Sell. This is my home. This has been the Freeman home for 3 generations. I bought this house when this neighborhood was burning, and I rebuilt it with my own hands." Hunter laughed, a cold, dry sound that grated on my nerves. "Come on, Elijah. Be realistic. Look around. This neighborhood isn't what it used to be. It is upscale now. It is gentrified. People like Brad's clients want historical charm, but they don't want, well, the old baggage. You don't fit in here anymore. The neighbors look at this place and see an eyesore. You would be much happier in that assisted living facility upstate, the one with the nice garden." Gabrielle walked in nodding as she tapped on her phone. "It is for your own good, Dad. This house is drafty and old. It is a money pit. Brad can get us a cash offer by Monday. Think about it. You won't have to worry about stairs or maintenance. We are just looking out for you. Looking out for me." They were measuring the square footage of my living room while my wife's body was barely cold. They were carving up the carcass of my life before I was even dead. I looked at Hunter, watching him point out the original crown molding to the real estate agent, talking about how they would need to strip the paint and whiten the place up to make it palpable for the new demographic. It took every ounce of self-control I possessed not to tell them right then and there that the deed wasn't even in my name anymore, that I had moved it to a trust years ago. But I stayed silent. I had to play the part. I was about to roar to tell them that I had more money in a single offshore account than the three of them combined would make in a lifetime. But my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Dr. Evans, our family physician for 30 years. I answered, turning away from Hunter and the vulture real estate agent, pressing the phone tight against my ear. "Hello, Elijah." The voice on the other end was urgent, hushed, as if he was afraid of being overheard. "Do not react. Do not look at them. Just listen to me." I got the toxicology report back from the lab. I had them run it 3 times because I couldn't believe it. Coretta's heart didn't just stop Elijah. Her blood was saturated with arsenic. The levels suggest she has been ingesting it for at least 6 months. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. My vision blurred, the room spinning slightly. Arsenic. 6 months. The timeline clicked into place with terrifying precision. 6 months ago was exactly when Hunter started being so helpful in the kitchen. It was when he insisted on making Coretta her special green health smoothies every morning because she had been feeling fatigued. He would stand there smiling, blending the kale and the spinach, handing it to her with a kiss on the forehead. "Drink up, Mom," he would say. "It will make you strong." He had been poisoning her. He had been killing the woman I loved, spoonful by spoonful, day by day, right in front of my eyes. Dr. Evans continued, his voice dropping even lower. "You are in danger, Elijah. If they did this to her, you are next. They are clearing the board. Get out of there. Come to my clinic. Use the back entrance. And Elijah, do not tell them where you are going. If they know you won't make it through the night." I hung up the phone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at Hunter, who was now laughing at something the real estate agent said. I looked at Gabrielle, my daughter, the girl I had carried on my shoulders, who was now scrolling through her phone, indifferent to the dismantling of her childhood home and the murder of her mother. I knew I couldn't fight them physically. Not yet. I was strong for 70, but Hunter was 35 and desperate. I needed to be smart. I needed to be the engineer. I clutched my stomach and let out a groan, slumping slightly against the wall. Oh, Lord, my stomach. It must have been that casserole Mrs. Jenkins brought. I feel terrible. I need to get to the bathroom. Hunter waved his hand dismissively without even looking at me, too absorbed in the prospect of his commission. Yeah, go ahead, old man. Just don't make a mess. We have a viewing potential later." I shuffled towards the hallway, dragging my feet, making sure my shoulders were hunched, playing the part of the frail, sick old man they believed I was. I walked past the bathroom door, listening for their voices. They were arguing about the listing price. I straightened my back. The shuffle disappeared. I moved with a silent speed I hadn't used since my days supervising high-rise construction sites. I bypassed the bathroom and went straight to the back door that led to the alleyway, the one we kept locked with a heavy deadbolt. I slid the lock back silently. I stepped out into the cool evening air, the wind drying the sweat on my forehead. I didn't look back at the house that held my memories. I ran. I ran because my life depended on it, and because the war for my survival and for Coretta's justice had just begun. I arrived at Dr. Evans' clinic through the rear delivery entrance just as the sun began to dip below the skyline, casting long shadows across the alleyway. My chest was heaving, and sweat dripped down my back, soaking my shirt. I was 70 years old, and I had just sprinted 3 blocks like a man running from a burning building. In a way, I was. The clinic was quiet, the reception lights dimmed for the evening. Dr. Evans was waiting for me in his private office, a room filled with the smell of rubbing alcohol and old paper. He did not greet me with a handshake. He did not offer me water. He simply pointed to the leather chair opposite his desk and locked the door behind me. The click of the deadbolt sounded like a gunshot in the silence. "Elijah, look at this," Evans said, pushing a file across the mahogany desk. His hands were shaking. I had known this man since we played stickball in the streets of Brooklyn 50 years ago. I had never seen him afraid until now. I picked up the file. It was a toxicology report filled with numbers and graphs that meant nothing to me at first glance. All I saw were spikes, red lines climbing higher and higher on a timeline that stretched back 6 months. "What am I looking at, Evans?" I asked, my voice raspy. "You are looking at a murder weapon, Elijah." He leaned forward, his eyes intense behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "This is a chart of the arsenic levels in Coretta hair and blood samples. I kept the samples from her last checkup because her rapid decline made no medical sense to me. A healthy woman does not just wither away in weeks. Look at the dates." I squinted at the paper. The first spike was small, barely a blip on the radar. That was 6 months ago. The next spike was higher, then higher. The levels rose consistently week after week until the day she died. She was not just poisoned, once Evans whispered. She was dosed. Systematically. Every single day for half a year. They did not just kill her, Elijah. They tortured her. They slowly shut down her organs one by one while we watched, thinking it was just old age or some aggressive autoimmune disease. The paper fell from my hands. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I grabbed the edge of the desk to keep from sliding out of the chair. My Coretta. My strong, beautiful wife who had marched for civil rights, who had raised a daughter and held our family together through lean years and plenty. They had treated her like a pest they were trying to exterminate. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. How I choked out. How did they do it? We ate the same food. We drank the same water. Why am I still here while she is in an urn? Evans looked at me with pity. Think, Elijah. Was there anything she consumed that you did not? Anything specific to her routine? Something new that started about 6 months ago? The question hung in the air, and suddenly my mind was pulled back to the kitchen of my brownstone. I saw the morning sunlight filtering through the yellow curtains. I saw Hunter standing by the counter, the blender roaring. The smoothies. It hit me with the force of a physical blow. 6 months ago, Hunter had suddenly become obsessed with Coretta health. He had read some article about the benefits of green juices for seniors. Every morning without fail, he would be in the kitchen chopping kale, spinach, apples, and ginger. He would blend it into a thick green sludge. I remembered the first time he offered me one. I had taken a sip and spat it out laughing, telling him it tasted like lawn clippings and dirt. I stuck to my black coffee and eggs. But Coretta, my sweet, trusting Coretta, she had wrinkled her nose, but she drank it. Hunter would stand there smiling, that charming, toothy smile of his, watching her swallow every drop. "It is for your heart, Mom," he would say. "It is full of antioxidants. It will keep you around for the grandkids." He had been feeding her poison. Every morning. He had watched her drink her own death, and he had smiled while doing it. I remembered days when she complained about a metallic taste in her mouth. I told her it was probably the iron in the spinach. I had reassured her. I had encouraged her to drink the very thing that was killing her. A roar of pure primal agony ripped itself from my throat. I stood up, knocking the chair backward. It crashed against the wall. "I am going to kill him." I shouted the words, echoing off the walls of the small office. "I am going to tear him apart with my bare hands." I turned toward the door, blind with rage. All I could see was Hunter's face, that smug, entitled face. I wanted to wrap my fingers around his throat and squeeze until the light went out of his eyes, just like he had done to my wife. I wanted to burn the house down with him inside it. "Elijah, stop!" Evans shouted, coming around the desk. He grabbed my arm. He was smaller than me, but his grip was like iron. "Let me go, Evans. He killed her. He killed my Coretta. And if you go back there now and attack him, you will go to prison for the rest of your life, and he will win." Evans yanked me back. "Listen to me, you stubborn old fool. Think. Use that engineer brain of yours. You have no proof." I pointed at the file on the desk. "That is proof." "That is proof she was poisoned," Evans said, his voice hard and desperate. "It is not proof that Hunter did it. Any defense attorney would tear this apart. They would say she ingested it accidentally. They would say it was environmental. They would say maybe you did it." I froze. "Me?" "Yes, you," Evans said, letting go of my arm. "You are the husband. You were in the house. If you go to the police right now without concrete evidence linking Hunter to the arsenic, they will look at you first. And while they are investigating you, Hunter and Gabrielle will sell your house, drain your accounts, and vanish. Is that what you want? Do you want them to get away with it while you rot in a cell?" I slumped against the wall, the energy draining out of me as quickly as it had come. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, my head in my hands. The tears finally came hot and stinging. I sobbed for the woman I failed to protect. I sobbed for the betrayal of my own daughter, who must have known, who must have watched her husband mix that poison morning after morning. So what do? I whispered. Do I just let them get away with it? No, Evans said, crouching down beside me. We get justice. But we do it the right way. We do it your way. You build a trap, Elijah. You construct a prison for them so tight they won't even know they are inside it until the door slams shut. He handed me a handkerchief. I wiped my face and looked at him. How? You have to go back, Evans said. I shook my head violently. I cannot look at him. I cannot sleep under the same roof as the monsters who killed her. You must, Evans insisted. You have to go back, and you have to play the part. They think you are a senile, helpless old man. Good. Let them believe it. Be the frail widower. Be confused. Forget names. Shuffle your feet. Make them believe you are absolutely no threat to them. Make them believe you are next on the list to die of natural causes. He stood up and offered me a hand. I took it and hauled myself up. My knees felt weak, but my mind was starting to clear. The red haze of rage was cooling into something harder, something sharper. You need to find the poison, Evans said. You need to find where he keeps it. You need to find financial records. You need to get them on tape admitting what they did. And you need to stay alive while you do it. Do not eat anything they give you. Buy your own food. Hide it in your room. Water from the tap only. I nodded slowly. The plan was forming. I had spent 40 years building skyscrapers, calculating loads and stresses, finding the weak points in steel and concrete. I knew how to bring things down. I just had to find the structural weakness in Hunter and Gabrielle Greed. I will do it, I said. My voice sounded different to my own ears. It was colder. The voice of Elijah the husband was gone. This was the voice of Elijah the architect of their destruction. Evans unlocked the door. Go home, Elijah. Play the role of your life. And for God's sake, be careful. If they suspect you know, they will not wait for the arsenic to work on you. They will use a pillow or a flight of stairs. I stepped out into the night air. The streetlights buzzed overhead. I adjusted my collar and hunched my shoulders. I practiced a tremulous shake in my right hand. I let my jaw go slack. I walked toward the bus stop, not with the confident stride of a wealthy engineer, but with the shuffling gait of a man who has given up. I was going back to the brownstone. I was going back to the scene of the crime. I was going back to live with the wolves. But they did not know that the sheep they were planning to slaughter was actually a lion in disguise. And I was hungry. I boarded the bus and sat in the back. I watched the city pass by, reflecting in the window. I saw my own reflection. Old, black, invisible. That invisibility was my superpower now. They would never see me coming. I thought about the green smoothies. I thought about Coretta's smile as she drank them, trusting them. I clenched my fist in my pocket until my nails bit into my palm. Let them think I am broken. Let them think I am dying. I would let them get comfortable. I would let them think they had won. And then when they reached for the prize, I would snap the trap shut and break their fingers. I got off the bus a block away from my house. I could see the lights on in the living room. They were probably in there right now celebrating, counting their inheritance, measuring the drapes. I walked up the steps, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm of vengeance. I unlocked the door. I am home, I called out, my voice cracking perfectly. I felt so sick, I think I need to lie down. Hunter's voice drifted from the kitchen. Sure thing, Dad. Sleep tight. I walked up the stairs to my bedroom. I locked the door. I pulled a can of peaches from my coat pocket that I had bought at the corner store. I ate them in the dark, listening to the house settle, listening to the murmurs of my enemies downstairs. The diagnosis was terminal, but not for me. The cancer in this house was Hunter and Gabrielle, and I was going to cut them out. I unlocked the front door, and the silence of the house hit me differently than before. It was not the peaceful quiet of a home settling in for the night. It was the heavy, expectant silence of a crime scene waiting to be discovered. My heart was still racing from the conversation with Dr. Evans, but I forced my breathing to slow. I shuffled my feet, dragging the left one slightly, just as I had practiced. I made my way down the hallway toward my study. This room was my sanctuary. It was where I had drafted the blueprints for the seismic dampers that kept the skyline of San Francisco from crumbling. It was lined with mahogany bookshelves I had built myself, filled with technical manuals, structural engineering journals, and history books Coretta loved. but as I pushed the door open, I felt the air leave my lungs. It had been ransacked. Books were pulled from the shelves and thrown onto the floor in chaotic piles. The drawers of my heavy oak desk were yanked out, their contents dumped onto the Persian rug. Papers were everywhere. In the center of the storm stood Hunter. He was rifling through a stack of old tax returns, his face twisted in frustration. He looked up when I entered, and for a split second he looked guilty. Then the mask of the concerned son-in-law slid back into place. "Oh, Elijah," he said, tossing the papers back onto the desk. "I was just looking for the insurance policies. We need to make sure everything is in order for the funeral costs. You know how expensive these things can be." He was lying. We had already discussed the cremation costs. He was not looking for insurance papers. He was looking for the ledger. For 40 years, I had kept a physical record of every patent royalty, every land acquisition, and every dividend payment in a bound leather book. It was an artifact of a bygone era, but it was the only proof of my wealth that existed outside of encrypted bank servers. If Hunter found that book, he would know I was not a poor retiree. He would know I was worth millions, and he would kill me tonight. The ledger was hidden in plain sight. It was inside a hollowed-out volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica, specifically the volume for S through T, labeled Structural Theory. It sat on the second shelf from the top right behind Hunter's head. I let my jaw go slack and stared at the mess on the floor. "Who did this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Who made this mess? Coretta will be so angry. She hates a mess." Hunter sighed loudly, rolling his eyes. "Coretta is gone, Elijah. Remember, we are just trying to help you organize. This room is a fire hazard. Look at all this junk." He turned back to the shelves, his hand hovering inches from the encyclopedia set. He was going to pull them down next. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to check behind the books for a wall safe. I had to stop him. I could not physically fight him. I had to use physics. I saw the stack of heavy architectural folios he had carelessly piled on the edge of the rolling ladder rail. They were unbalanced. A small shift in the center of gravity would bring them down. I shuffled forward, mumbling about my papers. I pretended to stumble, catching my foot on a pile of books. I fell hard, throwing my weight against the rolling ladder. The ladder slid along the rail with a screech. It hit the precarious stack of folios. Gravity did the rest. 50 pounds of hardcover books cascaded down, crashing onto the desk and the floor right next to Hunter. He jumped back, shouting a curse word that no son-in-law should use in front of his elder. "Watch it, you old fool," Hunter yelled, dusting off his jacket. "You almost broke my foot." I stayed on the floor, looking up at him with wide, watery eyes. I fell. I whimpered. I just wanted my book. Hunter looked at me with pure disgust. He looked at the chaotic pile of books that now covered the floor, making it impossible to search further without hours of work. He kicked a book aside. "Forget it," he spat. "There is nothing in this garbage heap anyway, just old paper and dust. Gabrielle can deal with this mess." He stormed out of the room, leaving me on the floor. I waited until I heard his heavy footsteps fade down the hall. I slowly picked myself up. My hip ached from the fall, but the ledger was safe. I looked at the volume on the shelf. It had not moved. I had bought myself time, but I knew they would be back. They were hunting, and they would not stop until they picked the carcass clean. The next morning, the war escalated. I was sitting at the kitchen table, eating dry toast and drinking tap water, refusing the coffee Hunter had brewed. The back door opened and Mrs. Higgins walked in. Clara Higgins had been our housekeeper for 20 years. She was not just an employee, she was family. She had nursed Coretta through the flu, she had cooked for Gabrielle, wedding she knew where every skeleton in this house was buried, and she knew about the smoothies. I saw the way she looked at Hunter when she entered. Her eyes were cold, suspicious. She knew something was wrong. She had seen Coretta decline, and she had seen Hunter's sudden interest in nutrition. Gabrielle walked into the kitchen, her phone in her hand. She did not even look up. "Clara, leave your keys on the counter. You are done here." Clara froze halfway to the pantry. "Excuse me, Miss Gabrielle." "You heard me," Gabrielle said, looking up with a bored expression. "We are letting you go. We found some silver missing from the dining room. We cannot have a thief in the house, especially with Dad condition." I gripped the edge of the table. It was a lie, a vicious, slanderous lie. Clara was the most honest woman I had ever met. They were firing her because she was a witness. They were clearing the board just like Dr. Evans had said. Clara's face crumpled. "I never took a thing in 20 years, she said, her voice shaking. "Mr. Elijah, tell them I would never steal from you." She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes begged me to speak, to be the man she knew I was. She looked at me, expecting the Elijah who had paid for her grandson tuition, the Elijah who always had a kind word. "Mr. Elijah, please," she pleaded. "Do not let them do this. I promised Coretta I would look after you." I looked at her. I saw the pain and the confusion. I wanted to stand up and order Gabrielle and Hunter out of my house. I wanted to tell Clara that she was safe, that I would protect her. But if I did that, I would sign her death warrant. If I showed them I was lucid, if I fought back now, they would know I was on to them. And they would not just fire Clara, they might hurt her to keep her quiet. Or they might accelerate their timeline for me. I had to break her heart to save her life. I looked down at my toast. I let my hand shake. "Who is this?" I mumbled. "Coretta, where is my coffee?" Clara gasped. The sound was like a physical blow to my chest. She looked at me and she saw a senile old man who had forgotten her. She saw a man who could not help her. Gabrielle smirked. "See, Clara, he does not even know who you are. Get out, before I call the police." Clara placed her keys on the counter. She wiped her eyes with her apron. She looked at me one last time with pity and profound sadness. "Goodbye, Mr. Elijah," she whispered. "May God protect you." She walked out the back door and I heard her sobbing as she went down the steps. I sat there chewing my dry toast, feeling like a coward. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I had let them humiliate a good woman. I had let them strip away my last ally in this house. Hunter walked in, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Good riddance," he said. "That woman was always listening at doors. Now we have some privacy." Privacy. That was what they wanted. They wanted the house empty so they could finish what they started. They wanted me alone. I stood up, shuffling toward the hallway. "I am going to nap," I said. "Good idea, Dad," Gabrielle said, not looking up from her phone. I went to my room, but I did not nap. I waited. I waited until I heard the front door close and the sound of Hunter's car pulling out of the driveway. Gabrielle was in the living room watching television. I opened my closet and reached into the back of the top shelf behind a stack of old hats. I pulled out a small metal toolbox. It was dusty, but the contents were pristine. Inside were remnants of my career tools of inspection and analysis: fiber optic cables, high-resolution microlenses, and long-range microphones. I had used these to inspect the structural integrity of bridges, to find cracks in concrete that the naked eye could not see. Now I would use them to find the cracks in my family. I moved silently through the house. I was an engineer. I knew how to run wires behind drywall without leaving a trace. I knew how to hide things in plain sight. I started in the living room. There was a large antique teddy bear on the mantelpiece, a gift from Coretta to Gabrielle when she was a child. It sat there watching the room with glass button eyes. I carefully removed the right eye. I inserted a micro camera lens smaller than a pinhead into the socket. I wired it to a battery pack I hid inside the stuffing. I replaced the eye. It looked perfect. Now the bear would see everything. I moved to the dining room. The crystal chandelier hung low over the table. I dragged a chair over and climbed up. My knees protested, but I ignored the pain. I nested a microphone into the brass canopy at the top of the fixture where it met the ceiling. It would pick up every whisper at the dinner table. I worked quickly, my hands steady and sure. I felt a grim satisfaction. They thought I was a helpless old man losing his mind. They thought they were the predators. I went back to my room and opened my laptop, which I kept hidden under the floorboards beneath my bed. I synced the feeds. The screen flickered to life. I saw the living room in high definition. I heard the sound of the television downstairs. I had eyes. I had ears. I sat back on my bed, my heart pounding. I was not just waiting to die anymore. I was hunting. I was gathering the evidence that would send them to prison for the rest of their lives. I heard the front door open. Hunter was back. "Honey, you won't believe what the lawyer said," I heard Hunter's voice clearly through the laptop speakers. I leaned in closer. "Talk to me, Hunter," I whispered. "Tell me everything." It was 2 a.m, and the only light in my room came from the cold blue glow of my laptop screen hidden beneath a blanket tent I had constructed to muffle the sound. I felt like a child hiding from monsters, but the monsters were real, and they were downstairs in my living room drinking my vintage Bordeaux. Through the grainy feed of the camera hidden in the teddy bear eye, I watched them. Hunter was sprawled on my leather sofa, his feet resting on the coffee table Coretta had polished every Saturday for 30 years. He held a glass of wine by the bowl, his fingerprints smearing the crystal. Gabrielle sat opposite him, her posture rigid, her face illuminated by the flickering light of the fireplace they had lit, despite it being a warm evening. "To your mother," Hunter said, raising his glass in a mock toast. The woman had impeccable timing. "I thought she would hang on for another 6 months, but she checked out right when the interest payments were about to break my legs." Gabrielle did not scold him. She did not throw her wine in his face for disrespecting the woman who birthed her. She just took a long sip and sighed. "I miss her, Hunter," she said, but her voice was flat, devoid of the grief a daughter should feel. "You miss the idea of her," Hunter corrected. "You do not miss changing her sheets or listening to her hum those gospel songs. Be honest, Gabby, it is a relief." He stood up and began pacing the room, the microphone in the chandelier picking up the heavy thud of his boots. I adjusted the volume on my laptop, my hands trembling not from age, but from a fury so cold it burned. "Now we just have to deal with the old man," Hunter said, gesturing toward the ceiling toward me. "God, he is useless. Watching him shuffle around today made me sick. Do you know how hard it is to pretend I care about his stories? He is just a relic, Gabby. A dusty old relic in a house that is worth more than his entire life." He stopped in front of the fireplace and stared at the family portrait hanging above the mantel. It was a picture of us from 20 years ago. Me, Coretta, and a teenage Gabrielle. "You know what I really hate?" Hunter said, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "It is the smell. This whole house smells like old people and fried food. I cannot wait to gut it. We are going to strip this place down to the studs. White marble floors, minimalist furniture. Get rid of all this African art and these dusty rugs. We are going to sanitize it. We are going to make it livable for civilized people." I froze. Civilized people. The implication hung in the air heavy and ugly. "You people always hold on to junk," Hunter continued, turning back to Gabrielle. "You call it heritage, but it is just hoarding. It is trash. Just like this neighborhood used to be before people with actual money started moving in. You are lucky I pulled you out of here, Gabby. You are lucky I gave you a glimpse of how the other half lives." There it was. The racism he had kept buried under polite smiles and firm handshakes. He did not just want my money. He despised my existence. He despised my history. He saw my daughter not as a partner, but as a rescue project, a savage he had tamed. And Gabrielle, my beautiful, brilliant daughter, just nodded. "I know," she whispered. "I know. I just want it to be over. I want the money, Hunter. The gambling debts, are they really that bad?" Hunter flinched. It was the first time I saw fear crack his arrogant facade. "Tony is not a patient man," Hunter muttered. "I owe him 50 grand, Gabby. If I do not have a significant installment by next week, he is going to start breaking things. And I do not mean furniture. That is why we needed your mother insurance payout. But the probate takes time. We need to sell this house. And we cannot sell the house while Elijah is still breathing and refusing to sign the power of attorney." I leaned back against my headboard, the laptop warm on my lap. $50,000. He had murdered my wife and was planning to destroy my legacy because he was a degenerate gambler. He had reduced 40 years of building a life to a marker on a blackjack table. Gabrielle stood up and walked over to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "He is living too long," she said, her voice muffled by his jacket. "I thought the grief would break him. I thought he would just give up after Mom died. But he is eating. He is sleeping. He is stubborn. He is like a cockroach." Hunter laughed darkly. "You have to step on them to make sure they are dead. We cannot wait for nature to take its course, Gabby. We do not have time. Tony does not have time." "So what do we do?" Gabrielle asked, looking up at him. "We help him along," Hunter said. He walked over to the sideboard where I kept my daily medications organized in a plastic pillbox. He picked up the bottle of digoxin, my heart medication. "Dr. Evans said his heart is strong for his age," Hunter said, turning the bottle over in his hands. "But too much of a good thing can be fatal. Digitalis toxicity. It mimics a heart attack, or a stroke, confusion, nausea, irregular heartbeat. In a man his age, with the stress of losing his wife, no coroner would look twice." Gabrielle stepped back. "You want to overdose him. I want to double his dose," Hunter corrected. "Just a little extra every day. It will build up in his system. He will get confused. He will get dizzy. He will fall down the stairs, or his heart will just stutter and stop. It is clean. It is quiet. And it solves all our problems." Gabrielle looked at the bottle, then at the ceiling toward my room. She hesitated for a second, a single heartbeat, where I prayed she would find her conscience. "Do it," she said. The feed on my screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. She had agreed. She had signed my death warrant as easily as ordering a pizza. Hunter grinned and uncapped the bottle. He tipped a few extra pills into the compartments for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. "Start tomorrow," he said. "Put it in his coffee if he will not take it. Or just swap the pills in the organizer. He is so blind he will never notice." They toasted again, the crystal clinking with a cheerful sound that made me want to scream. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the beat of my own heart, the heart they wanted to stop. I felt a cold, structural clarity settle over me. The foundation of this family was rotten. There was no saving it. It had to be demolished. I waited until 3 in the morning. The house was silent. I could hear Hunter snoring from the guest room where he often slept when he had too much to drink. I slipped out of bed, moving with the slow, deliberate practice of a cat burglar. I crept down the hallway, the floorboards familiar under my feet. I knew which ones creaked, and I stepped over them. I reached the kitchen. The moonlight cast long silver bars across the floor. I went to the cabinet where we kept the vitamins. I found a bottle of vitamin D supplements. They were small, round, and white, almost identical to my digoxin tablets. I took the digoxin bottle from the counter where Hunter had left it. I emptied the pills into my hand and wrapped them in a paper towel. Then I filled the bottle with the vitamin D pills. I placed it back exactly where it had been. If they wanted to poison me, they would be curing my deficiency instead. But I was not done. I needed to make a call, and I could not use the landline or my cell phone. Hunter was likely monitoring the bill, and he had ears everywhere. I put on my coat and my old fedora. I unlocked the back door, the mechanism well-oiled and silent. I stepped out into the night. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and city exhaust. I walked 3 blocks to the old bodega on the corner, the one that still had a payphone outside covered in graffiti. I inserted the coins, my fingers stiff in the cold. I dialed a number I had memorized years ago. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "Hello." "Annalise, it is Elijah Freeman." There was a pause and then the rustle of sheets. "Uncle Elijah, is everything okay?" "It is 3 in the morning." Annalise was the daughter of my best friend from engineering school. I had watched her grow up. I had paid for her first semester of law school when her father passed. Now she was the sharpest criminal defense attorney in the state, a shark in a power suit who ate prosecutors for lunch. "Nothing is okay, Annalise," I said, my voice low and steady. "Coretta was murdered, and they are trying to kill me next." The silence on the other end was absolute. Then her voice changed. It became sharp, professional, dangerous. "Where are you?" "I am at a payphone. I cannot talk long. I need you to listen. I have recordings. I have toxicology reports. I have a ledger that proves I own half the block. But I cannot go to the police yet. I need to trap them." "Tell me what you need," Annalise said. "I need you to prepare a trust document," I said. "Backdate it if you have to. I need everything transferred out of my name immediately. And I need you to hire a security team. Not for me. For the party." "What party, Elijah?" "The party where I signed my life away," I said. "Hunter wants a show. He wants to parade me in front of his investors. He wants me to sign the power of attorney on stage. I am going to give him exactly what he wants." I could hear Annalise typing furiously in the background. "I am on it, Uncle Elijah. Do not die on me. I will not die," I promised. "I have too much work to do." I hung up the phone. I stood there for a moment under the flickering street lamp. I felt stronger than I had in years. They thought they were dealing with a senile old man. They thought they were dealing with a victim. They were about to find out that Elijah Freeman was not a building that could be easily condemned. I was a fortress, and I was about to bring the roof down on their heads. I turned back toward the house, toward the poison pills and the hidden cameras. I walked back into the darkness, ready for the morning, ready for war. The smell of rotten eggs hit me before the sound did. It was a thick, cloying stench that coated the back of my throat and woke me from a fitful sleep at 3 in the morning. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs, not from fear of the gas, but from the realization that the next phase of their war had begun. Before I could even swing my legs over the side of the bed, my door burst open. Hunter stood there, illuminated by the hallway light, his face twisted into a mask of exaggerated panic. "Dad, what have you done?" he screamed. "Do you want to kill us all?" He did not wait for an answer. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and hauled me out of bed. I stumbled, my bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood floor, playing the part of the confused old man, but my mind was racing. I knew exactly what was happening. This was the theater of the absurd, and I was the unwilling star. He dragged me down the stairs toward the kitchen. The smell was overpowering down here. Gabrielle was already standing by the stove, a handkerchief pressed to her nose, her eyes wide with a terror that looked rehearsed. The gas valve on the vintage Wolf Range Coretta loved so much was hissed open wide. On the counter, right next to the burner, sat a box of wooden matches. "Look at this," Hunter yelled, pointing at the stove. He left the gas running. And look, he was about to light a match. He was going to blow the roof off this house. Gabrielle let out a sob that sounded more like a shriek. "Oh my God, Dad. Why? Why would you do this? We could have died in our sleep." I looked at the stove. I had not made tea in 3 days. I had been drinking water from the bathroom tap and eating canned tuna in my locked bedroom. I had not touched that stove since the funeral, but I looked at them, my eyes wide and watery, and I let my lower lip tremble. "I just wanted some tea," I whispered, my voice cracking. I was cold. I just wanted to warm up. "You wanted tea?" Hunter scoffed, turning the valve off with a dramatic twist of his wrist. In the middle of the dark, without turning on the lights. "You are losing it, Elijah. You are a danger to yourself and everyone in this house." He turned to Gabrielle, who was now crying into her hands, her shoulders shaking. "See, Gabby," he said, his voice dropping to that reasonable, manipulative tone he used to control her. "I told you, it is the dementia. It is progressing faster than we thought. He forgets what he is doing. One minute he wants tea, the next minute he is burning down the neighborhood. We cannot watch him 24 hours a day. We need professional help." Gabrielle looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of genuine guilt in her eyes, but she crushed it instantly under the weight of her greed. She nodded slowly. "You are right, Hunter. We cannot risk this. If he hurts himself or someone else, I could never forgive myself." I stood there in my pajamas, shivering in the drafty kitchen, listening to them write the narrative of my insanity. They were building a case brick by brick. First the pills, now the gas. They needed a documented history of dangerous behavior to get a judge to sign the involuntary commitment papers. They were gaslighting me in the most literal sense of the word, trying to make me doubt my own reality, trying to make me look like a monster to the outside world. But I was an engineer. I knew about gas lines. I knew that the pilot light on that old stove had a safety mechanism that I had installed myself 10 years ago. It would not just leak indefinitely unless someone tampered with the coupling. Hunter had not just opened the valve, he had broken the safety. He had risked blowing up the entire block just to frame me. That was how desperate he was. That was how little he cared about the legacy of this neighborhood. "I am sorry," I mumbled, looking at my feet. "I did not mean to. I just forgot." "Go to bed," Dad, Hunter said, dismissing me like a naughty child. "We will deal with this in the morning, but do not leave your room. I am locking it from the outside for your own safety." I walked back up the stairs, the sound of the deadbolt sliding home on my bedroom door echoing like a prison sentence. I sat on my bed in the dark, listening to them moving around downstairs. They were probably fixing the coupling now, covering their tracks. I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. They wanted me to be crazy. Fine, I would give them crazy. But it would be a madness they could not control. The next morning, the sunlight streamed through my window, mocking the darkness of the night before. At 10 o'clock, the lock on my door clicked open. Hunter appeared, dressed in a sharp suit, his hair perfectly coiffed. "Get dressed, Elijah," he said. "Dr. Thorne is coming to see you." "Who is Dr. Thorne?" I asked, keeping my voice weak. "He is a specialist," Hunter said. "A friend of a friend. He is going to evaluate you, to see if we can get you some better medication, to help you with your memory." I knew what this was. This was the final nail. They had brought in a hired gun, a psychiatrist who would sign anything for the right price. I dressed slowly, putting on a mismatched shirt and trousers, buttoning them wrong on purpose. I wanted to look disheveled. I wanted to look like the man they described. When I came downstairs, Dr. Thorne was sitting in the living room. He was a thin man with a pointed beard and eyes that shifted constantly, avoiding direct contact. He held a clipboard close to his chest. Gabrielle sat next to him, looking anxious. Hunter stood behind the sofa like a warden. "Mr. Freeman," Dr. Thorne said, not standing up to greet me. "Please sit down." I sat on the hard wooden chair they had placed in the center of the room. It felt like an interrogation. "Your family tells me you have been having some trouble lately." Dr. Thorne began, his pen hovering over the paper. "Forgetting things, confusing night and day, attempting to cook at odd hours." I looked at him blankly. "I like tea," I said. "Yes." "Well," Dr. Thorne murmured, making a note. "Tell me, Mr. Freeman, do you know what year it is?" I looked at the window. "It is 1974, I said. "Coretta is at the market." Hunter let out a loud sigh. "See, doctor, he thinks Mom is still alive. He thinks it is 40 years ago." Dr. Thorne nodded, scribbling furiously. "Disorientation, temporal confusion, hallucinations. Mr. Freeman, do you know who the president is?" I leaned forward, squinting at him. "Are you the president?" I asked. Gabrielle covered her mouth to hide a gasp or maybe a laugh. Dr. Thorne looked at Hunter and shook his head. "It seems quite advanced," he said to Hunter, ignoring me completely. "Based on your report of the gas incident and his current state, I would recommend immediate custodial care. He is a profound risk to his own safety. I can sign the emergency committal paperwork right now." This was it, the moment they had paid for, the moment I lost my freedom. I felt the adrenaline spike in my blood. I had to act. I had to break the script. I stood up suddenly, knocking the chair over. It clattered loudly against the floor. "No!" I shouted, my voice booming with a strength that made Gabrielle jump. "I do not want to go. You are stealing my brain." I grabbed a porcelain vase from the side table, a cheap reproduction Gabrielle had bought to replace Coretta African statues. I hurled it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Dad, stop!" Hunter yelled, moving toward me. I spun around, my eyes wild, my movements jerky and unpredictable. I grabbed a heavy brass candlestick. I swung it through the air, not aiming to hit anyone, but creating a perimeter of chaos. "Get away from me!" I screamed. "Devils! You are all devils!" Dr. Thorne stood up, looking alarmed. "Mr. Freeman, please calm down. This aggression is a classic symptom of—" I lunged at him. Hunter tried to grab me, but I sidestepped him with a move I had learned on the boxing team in college. I crashed into Dr. Thorne, pinning him against the bookshelf. To Hunter and Gabrielle, it looked like a violent, senile outburst. It looked like I was attacking the doctor, but as I grabbed his lapels, pulling his face close to mine, I dropped the act completely. My eyes locked onto his, and I let him see the cold, hard intelligence burning there. I leaned into his ear. "I know Hunter paid you $10,000 in cash this morning," I whispered, my voice steady and menacing. "I know about the malpractice lawsuit you settled in Chicago 3 years ago. I know you lost your license in Illinois before you came here." Dr. Thorne's eyes went wide with shock. The color drained from his face, leaving him pasty and gray. He tried to pull away, but I held him fast. "If you sign that paper," I hissed, "I will send the proof to the medical board and the FBI. Run! Run before I ruin you!" I let him go and shoved him backward. He stumbled, tripping over his own feet. "He is crazy," Dr. Thorne stammered, looking at me with pure terror. "He is dangerous." "Sign the papers," Hunter demanded, grabbing the doctor's arm. "Just sign them and we will call the orderlies." "No," Dr. Thorne shouted, shaking Hunter off. "I cannot do this. He is—" "This is impossible. You did not tell me he knew. You did not tell me." He did not finish the sentence. He grabbed his briefcase and bolted for the door. "Doctor, wait!" Gabrielle cried, standing up. "Where are you going?" Dr. Thorne did not answer. The front door slammed shut behind him, leaving a ringing silence in the room. I stood in the center of the living room, chest heaving, looking at the shattered vase and the overturned chair. Hunter stared at the door, then turned to me, his face twisted in confusion and rage. "What did you say to him?" Hunter demanded, stepping closer. "What did you whisper to him, you old lunatic?" I let my shoulders slump. I let my jaw go slack again. I looked at him with watery, vacant eyes. "Who was that man?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why was he hurting me? I want Coretta. Where is Coretta?" Hunter looked at me, searching for a trace of the man who had just terrified the doctor. But I was gone. I was just a confused old man again. He ran his hands through his hair, frustration radiating off him in waves. "Useless," he spat. "He is useless. We have to find another doctor. Someone with a stronger stomach." Gabrielle looked at me, and for the first time she looked scared. Not of my madness, but of the situation. Of the chaos that was consuming their perfect plan. Maybe we should just put him in the basement, Hunter, she whispered. Until we find someone. Just lock him down there. It is safer. Hunter looked at me, his eyes cold. Yeah, the basement. That is a good idea. He cannot break anything down there, and nobody will hear him scream. They looked at each other, and I knew the clock had just run out. The gaslighting was over. They were moving to direct force. I had won the battle with the doctor, but the war was about to get much darker. I had to move fast. I had to get to the basement on my own terms before they dragged me there, because the basement was where the main phone line junction box was located, and I had one more call to make. I watched from my bedroom window as Gabrielle dragged 3 black heavy-duty garbage bags to the curb. It was garbage day tomorrow. The way she heaved them onto the asphalt showed no reverence, no hesitation. To her, those bags were just clutter taking up space in the closet she planned to fill with her own designer coats. But to me, they were 40 years of memories. They were the silk dress Coretta wore to our anniversary dinner, the hand-knitted sweaters she made during the long winters, the floral aprons she wore while humming in the kitchen. They were throwing my wife away piece by piece, erasing her scent from the house as if she had never existed. I waited until the house was silent. Hunter had passed out on the sofa downstairs, a half-empty bottle of scotch on the floor beside him. Gabrielle was in her room, probably sleeping the deep, dreamless sleep of the soulless. I crept down the stairs, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I unlocked the front door and slipped out into the cold night air. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on the bags sitting by the road. I grabbed the first bag. It was heavy. I dragged it quietly across the lawn, moving it to the side of the house near the basement bulkhead doors. I did the same with the second and the third. My back screamed in protest, but I ignored the pain. I hauled them down into the damp, musty darkness of the basement where they had threatened to lock me up. I sat on the concrete floor surrounded by the plastic mountains, and I tore them open. The smell of lavender and stale perfume hit me instantly. It was so strong it felt like Coretta was standing right there beside me. I buried my face in a blue cardigan, inhaling deeply, letting the tears flow freely for the first time in days. But I did not have time to grieve. I had to search. Dr. Evans had told me to look for financial records, but my gut told me there was something else. Coretta was a woman of secrets, a woman who hid cash in cookie jars and important papers inside old Bibles. If she knew something, she would have left a sign. I went through the pockets of every blouse, every pair of slacks. Nothing but old tissues and a few peppermint candies. I felt a rising panic. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she had died without leaving a trace. I reached for the last item in the pile. It was her heavy winter coat, the gray wool one we had bought in Chicago 20 years ago. It was built like armor, heavy and thick. I ran my hands over the fabric, checking the deep pockets. Empty. I was about to throw it aside when I felt it. A small, hard lump in the lining of the hem near the bottom. It was not a button. It was rectangular and rigid. I pulled out my pocket knife, the small buck knife I always carried, and carefully sliced the stitching. I reached 2 fingers into the gap and pulled out a small silver USB drive. It was wrapped in a piece of plastic wrap to protect it from moisture. I stared at it in the dim light of the basement bulb. Coretta did not use computers. She barely knew how to text. Why would she have this? I scrambled up the stairs to my room, clutching the drive like a diamond. I crawled under my blanket tent again and plugged it into the laptop. A single video file popped up on the screen. It was titled simply "For Elijah." I clicked play. The image was shaky at first, the camera angle low, as if the phone had been propped up against a stack of books. Then Coretta's face filled the frame. She looked tired, her skin ashen, her eyes sunken with dark circles. But her gaze was steady. She was wearing her nightgown, the one with the small blue flowers. Based on the light coming through the window behind her, this was filmed in the morning, likely just weeks before she died. "Elijah, honey," she began, her voice raspy. "If you are watching this, it means I am gone, and it means you were smart enough to check my coat. You always were the smart one." She paused to cough, a dry hacking sound that rattled in her chest. She took a sip of water from a glass on the nightstand. "I need you to listen to me, Elijah. Listen. And I need you to promise me you will not do anything rash. I know you. I know that temper. You bury it deep, but it is there. Keep it buried, baby. At least until you are safe." She looked directly into the lens, her eyes filling with tears. "I know about the smoothies, Elijah. I know what Hunter puts in them. I tasted the bitterness weeks ago. I saw the bottle of rat poison in the garage behind the paint cans. I saw him measuring it out. I gasped, clapping a hand over my mouth to stifle the sound. She knew. She knew she was being poisoned, and she drank it anyway. Why? Why would she do that? You are wondering why I didn't say anything? She continued as if reading my mind. You are wondering why I sat there every morning and let that man kill me. It wasn't because I was weak, Elijah. It was because of Gabrielle. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Gabrielle came to me 3 months ago. She found out I knew about the poison. I caught them talking about it in the kitchen. I was going to go to the police, Elijah. I was going to turn them in. But Gabrielle stopped me. She showed me a picture. Coretta held up a trembling hand to the camera holding a small printed photograph. It was a picture of a little boy, maybe 5 years old, with bright eyes and a smile that looked exactly like Gabrielle. This is Dion, she whispered. He is our grandson, Elijah. Gabrielle had him when she was 16. You remember that summer she went to stay with her aunt in Georgia. She didn't go to summer school. She went to have a baby. We made her give him up for adoption because we thought it was best. We thought we were giving her a future. But she kept tabs on him. She found him. I stared at the screen, stunned. A grandson. We had a grandson. She told me that if I went to the police, if I exposed Hunter, she would make sure I never saw Dion again. Coretta said, tears streaming down her face. She told me that Hunter has people, dangerous people, who would hurt the boy. And she told me that if I didn't cooperate, if I didn't let nature take its course, Hunter would kill you too. She leaned closer to the camera, her face filling the screen. She said Hunter wanted the house and the insurance money to pay off his debts. She said he was desperate. She said if I died of natural causes, they would get the money and leave you alone. They would let you live out your days in peace. But if I fought, if I made a scene, Hunter would stage a break-in. He would kill both of us, Elijah, and he would hurt Dion. Coretta sobbed quietly for a moment, composing herself. So I made a deal with the devil. I told her I would drink the smoothies. I told her I would go quietly, on one condition, that she promised on her life that they would not touch you, that they would let you keep the house until you were ready to go. She promised Elijah. My own daughter looked me in the eye and promised she would not kill her father if I let her husband kill me. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that was absolute and terrifying. It was not grief. It was not anger. It was the total absence of mercy. My wife had sacrificed herself. She had walked to the executioner block every single morning and swallowed poison to buy my life. She had traded her heartbeat for mine. And Gabrielle had lied. She had promised to leave me alone, but the moment Coretta was cold, she had signed off on my murder too. She had looked at her mother's sacrifice and spat on it. I saved this money for you, Elijah, Coretta said, her voice growing weaker. The offshore account. The deeds. I hid the ledger in the encyclopedia. Use it. Use it to protect yourself. Use it to find Dion. Save that boy Elijah. Get him away from her. She is not our daughter anymore. Something broke in her a long time ago. The video flickered. Coretta looked exhausted, her eyes drooping. I love you, Elijah Freeman. You are the strongest man I know. Do not let them break you. Build something new. Build it for Dion. Goodbye, my love. The screen went black. I sat there in the dark, the silence of the room pressing in on me. I replayed the last few seconds in my head. She is not our daughter anymore. I closed the laptop. I stood up. My knees did not creak. My hands did not shake. The trembling old man was gone. The grieving widower was gone. In his place stood something else entirely. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The world looked different, sharper. I saw the geometry of the shadows, the structural weakness of the street lamps. I saw the fragility of everything. Coretta had died to save me. She had allowed herself to be murdered slowly, painfully, to protect me from these monsters. And they had broken their word before her body was even in the ground. They wanted a senile old man. Fine. I would give them a performance worthy of an Oscar. But behind the curtain, I was no longer just an engineer. I was an executioner. I walked to the mirror and looked at my face. I traced the lines of age, the gray in my beard. I looked into my own eyes and I saw a stranger staring back. A cold, hard stranger. I am not going to just send them to prison, I whispered to the empty room. Prison is too good for them. Prison is safe. They get 3 meals a day in prison. No, I was going to destroy them. I was going to take everything they loved, everything they coveted, everything they dreamed of. I was going to strip them of their reputation, their money, their freedom, and their future. I was going to leave them naked and shivering in the ruins of their own greed. And then I was going to find Dayon. I was going to find my grandson, and I was going to give him the life his mother never deserved. I went back to the bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I did not sleep. I lay there plotting, calculating, planning. The time for defense was over. It was time to go on the offensive. I heard footsteps in the hall. The door handle rattled. Locked from the outside. "Good night, Dad Hunter," voice mocked from the other side of the door. "Don't let the bedbugs bite." I stared at the door. "Good night, Hunter," I thought. "Enjoy your sleep, because it is the last peaceful night you will ever have. The storm is already in the house, and you left the window open." The basement door slammed open against the concrete wall with a violence that shook dust from the ceiling rafters. I was sitting on the edge of the cot they had dragged down there for me, shivering in the damp air. It had been 2 days since the incident with Dr. Thorne, 2 days of darkness broken only by the single bulb dangling overhead, 2 days of cold soup and the sound of their footsteps on the floorboards above my head. But now the waiting was over. Hunter stood at the bottom of the stairs, his silhouette framed by the light from the hallway. He held a thick sheaf of legal documents in one hand and a heavy flashlight in the other. He did not look like a son-in-law anymore. He looked like an executioner who had run out of patience. "Get up, Elijah," he barked, his voice echoing off the cinder blocks. I stood slowly, letting my knees buckle slightly, feigning a weakness I did not truly feel. I squinted into the light, raising a trembling hand to shield my eyes. "What is it?" "Hunter." I rasped, my throat dry from lack of water. "Is it time for dinner?" "Dinner is canceled," Hunter spat, throwing the papers onto the small, wobbly table beside the cot. "This ends tonight. I am done playing nursemaid to a stubborn old mule. You are going to sign these papers right now." I looked down at the documents. Even in the dim light, I recognized the header. It was a durable power of attorney granting Hunter and Gabrielle full unrestricted control over all my assets, my medical decisions, and my estate. It was a death warrant signed in ink. "I cannot sign this, Hunter," I whispered, backing away until my back hit the cold wall. "This gives you everything. My house, my pension, Coretta savings." Hunter laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "It gives us what we are owed, Elijah. We have taken care of you. We have put up with your dementia and your outbursts. Now you are going to pay us back." He took a step closer, invading my personal space. The smell of expensive scotch and stale sweat radiated off him. "You have 2 choices," he said, holding up 2 fingers. "Choice 1, you sign the papers. We sell the house. We put you in a nice private facility upstate. You get a room with a view and 3 hot meals a day. You live out your remaining years in comfort." He dropped one finger, leaving only the index finger pointing directly at my chest like a knife. "Choice 2, you refuse. And if you refuse, I make 1 phone call. I have a friend at the state mental hospital, the one down in the city. You know the place, Elijah. The one with the barred windows and the screams you can hear from the street." I felt a genuine chill run down my spine. I knew the place. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. A place where they strapped patients to metal beds and sedated them until they were vegetables. "If you go there," Hunter continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than his shouting, "you will never see the sun again. You will share a room with 3 other lunatics. You will wear a hospital gown that smells of urine, and you will die alone in the dark, wondering why you did not just sign the damn paper." He slammed his hand onto the table, making the papers jump. "So what is it going to be, Elijah? The view or the cage? You have 5 minutes to decide." I looked at him, my eyes wide with a terror that was only half-acted. I looked at the papers. I looked at the dark corners of the basement. I let my shoulders slump in defeat. I let a sob escape my lips. "Please, Hunter," I begged. "Not the state hospital. I cannot go there. They will hurt me." "Then sign," Hunter hissed, thrusting a pen into my hand. "Sign it, and you never have to worry about anything ever again." I took the pen, my hand shaking violently. I hovered the tip over the signature line. I took a deep, jagged breath. I was the mouse in the trap, and he was the cat licking his lips. but he did not know that the mouse was holding a stick of dynamite. I lowered the pen, but then I stopped. I pulled my hand back. "I will sign it," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "but I have a condition." Hunter's eyes narrowed. "You are in no position to make demands, old man." "I am not making a demand," I said, looking up at him, tears streaming down my face. "I am asking for a kindness, a final kindness for a dying man." Hunter crossed his arms, impatient. "What? What do you want?" "I want to do this right," I said, straightening my back just a fraction. "I want to do this with dignity. I do not want to sign my life away in a basement like a criminal. I am Elijah Freeman. I built skyscrapers. I was a man of respect." "So," Hunter asked, sneering, "so if I am going to give you everything," I continued, "I want people to know. I want them to know that I am passing the torch. I want a party." Hunter stared at me, his mouth falling open slightly. "A party? Are you insane? My 70th birthday is next week," I said. "You want the power of attorney. You want the house. Fine. Throw me a gala, a real celebration. Invite your investors. Invite your business partners. Invite the people you owe money to. Show them that you are the heir to the Freeman legacy. Show them that I trust you enough to hand over my empire in front of everyone." I saw the gears turning in his head. I saw the greed battling with the suspicion. But I knew his weakness. Hunter was a narcissist. He craved validation. He craved status. The idea of being publicly anointed as the successor to a man of my standing, even if he thought I was senile, was intoxicating to him. "You want a party?" he repeated slowly. "And if I do this, you will sign. I will sign the papers on stage, I promised. I will hand you the keys to the kingdom in front of every important person in this city. You will not just be rich, Hunter. You will be legitimate." I watched his eyes. I saw the moment the hook set. He was imagining it. He was picturing himself in a tuxedo, holding a glass of champagne, accepting the admiration of his peers. He was picturing the look on Tony the loan shark face when he saw that Hunter was good for the money. A gala, he mused. At the Grand Hotel. Black tie. "Yes," I said, feeding his fantasy. "The Grand Hotel. The ballroom with the crystal chandeliers. Coretta always loved that room." Hunter smiled. It was a shark smile. He thought he had won. He thought he had manipulated me into giving him a victory lap. "Okay, Dad," he said, his voice suddenly smooth and charming again. "You want a send-off? We will give you a send-off. A 70th birthday bash. The retirement of Elijah Freeman." He took the papers back. "We will do it Saturday," he said. "I will make the calls. I will get the investors there. But listen to me, Elijah. If you try anything, if you stutter, if you hesitate on that stage, I will drag you off and drive you straight to the asylum myself. Do you understand?" "I understand," I said, lowering my head. "I just want to be remembered as a generous man," Good Hunter said. He patted my shoulder, a gesture of ownership. "Stay down here tonight. We will get you cleaned up tomorrow. You need to look the part." He turned and walked up the stairs, taking the light with him. The door slammed shut and the lock clicked. I was alone in the dark again. I sat back down on the cot and let out a long, slow breath. My hands stopped shaking. I wiped the tears from my face. He had taken the bait. He was going to gather every witness I needed in one room. He was going to build the stage for his own execution. I reached under the mattress where I had hidden the small burner phone I had bought days ago. I dialed Annalise's number. "It is done," I whispered when she answered. "Saturday night. The Grand Hotel." "Did he agree?" she asked, her voice tight with tension. "He thinks it is his idea," I said. "He is inviting everyone, the investors, the sharks." "Good," Annalise said. "I have the security team ready. I have the projection equipment. And Elijah, I found the trust documents Coretta signed. They are bulletproof. The house does not belong to you anymore. It belongs to the Coretta Freeman Charitable Foundation. Even if you signed that power of attorney, it would be worthless." I smiled in the darkness. A fierce, predatory smile. "Bring the papers to the hotel," I said. "And bring the police. I want them waiting in the wings." "Are you sure you can do this?" Uncle Elijah Annalise asked. "It is going to be a lot of stress." I thought about the smoothies. I thought about the arsenic. I thought about Coretta's face on the video. "I am sure," I said. "Just make sure the projector works. I want them to see everything." I hung up and hid the phone again. I lay back on the cot, staring up at the darkness. I was hungry, I was cold, my back ached, but I felt a strange sense of peace. The trap was set, the spring was wound tight. All that was left was to wait for the snap. Upstairs, I could hear Hunter on the phone, his voice loud and boasting. He was probably calling the caterers, calling his friends, bragging about the big payday that was coming. He was celebrating his victory. Let him celebrate, I thought. Let him drink the expensive wine. Let him dream of spending my money. Because when Saturday came, I was going to turn his dream into a nightmare. I was going to show the world exactly what kind of man Hunter was, and I was going to do it with a smile on my face and a pen in my hand. The financial trap was not the power of attorney. The trap was his own greed, and he had just walked right into it with both eyes open. Saturday morning arrived with a cold gray light that filtered through the curtains of my bedroom, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I sat on the edge of my bed, waiting. Today was the day. The day Hunter would parade me in front of his investors like a prize pony. The day I would sign away my life. Or so he thought. I had bathed and shaved, scraping the white stubble from my chin, revealing the face of the man I used to be. I stood tall for a moment, stretching my back, feeling the strength in my spine that 70 years had not been able to erode. But when I heard heavy footsteps approaching the door, I slumped. I rounded my shoulders. I let my mouth hang slightly open. The engineer vanished, and the senile old man returned. Hunter burst into the room without knocking. He was holding a garment bag, but instead of the tuxedo I expected, he pulled out a suit that smelled of mothballs and neglect. It was a charcoal gray suit I had bought at a thrift store 10 years ago for painting the house. The elbows were worn thin, and there was a permanent stain of white latex paint on the left cuff. It was wrinkled and sad. "Put this on," Elijah Hunter commanded, tossing the suit onto the bed. I looked at the rag and then at him. He was wearing a bespoke Italian suit that probably cost more than my first car. The silk of his tie caught the light. He looked like $1 million. He wanted me to look like 10 cents. "I cannot wear this, Hunter," I said, my voice trembling. "It is dirty. It has paint on it. I have a nice suit in the closet. The black one I wore to the funeral." "No," Hunter said sharply, stepping between me and the closet. "You are not wearing the black suit. You are wearing this." "Why?" I asked, letting a tear leak from my eye. "I want to look nice for the party." Hunter laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "It is about the narrative, Elijah. You do not understand marketing, do you? If you walk out on that stage looking sharp and healthy, people might ask questions. They might wonder why a capable man is signing over his entire estate to his son-in-law. They might wonder why you need us to manage your money." He picked up the jacket and held it up, shaking it so the dust flew. "But if you look like this," Hunter continued, his smile widening, "if you look frail and confused and just a little bit pathetic, then I look like a saint. I look like the benevolent guardian taking care of the poor, broken old man. It makes the investors trust me. It makes them think I am a man of character." He threw the jacket at me. It hit me in the chest. "Put it on. And do not button the top button. I want you to look like you dressed yourself in the dark." I slowly began to dress, my fingers fumbling with the buttons, not because I was clumsy, but because I was acting. Hunter watched me with the critical eye of a director. When I was finally dressed in the ill-fitting suit, he nodded. "Perfect. Now for the finishing touch." He went to the hallway and dragged something into the room. It was a wheelchair, not a modern lightweight one, but an old, heavy hospital chair with rusting chrome and cracked leather upholstery. One of the front wheels was wobbly. "Sit down," Hunter ordered. "I can walk, Hunter," I protested. "I walked to the bathroom this morning. I do not need a chair." "Sit down," he roared, his face suddenly contorted with rage. "You are not walking tonight, Elijah. You are rolling. It adds to the effect. I do not want you stumbling around or wandering off. In the chair you stay where I put you." I lowered myself into the chair. The leather was cold and sticky. It smelled of antiseptic and despair. Hunter locked the brakes. "There," he said, stepping back to admire his handiwork. "You look exactly like what you are. A burden." He leaned down, getting right in my face. "Listen to me, old man. Tonight is my night. Do not speak unless spoken to. When we get to the hotel, I will wheel you onto the stage. I will give a speech. Then I will hand you the pen. You will sign the papers. You will smile, and you will say, 'Thank you, Hunter, for saving me.' Do you understand?" "I understand," I whispered, gripping the armrests. "Good. Stay here. We leave in 6 hours. Do not get the suit dirty." He unlocked the brakes, spun me around, and pushed me toward the corner facing the wall like a punished child. Then he left, locking the door behind him. I sat there staring at the floral wallpaper, counting the hours. He thought he was stripping me of my dignity. He thought he was reducing me to a prop. But he did not know that he was only making my testimony more powerful. When I stood up from this chair tonight, when I shed this skin of the helpless invalid, the shock would be that much greater. Hubris. It was the downfall of every great empire, and Hunter was drowning in it. 3 hours passed. I needed to make one final confirmation with Annalise. I needed to know that the police were in position and that the projector was set up. I reached into my sock where I had hidden the small Nokia burner phone. It was my lifeline, my connection to the outside world. I huddled in the chair, turning my back to the door, creating a shield with my body. I dialed the number, keeping my voice to a whisper barely audible even to myself. Annalise, it is me. Is everything ready? Yes, Uncle Elijah, she answered, her voice tight. The team is at the hotel. We have access to the AV system. The police are on standby. Just give the signal. The signal will be when I stand up, I said. Okay, be careful. They are leaving soon to set up. You will be alone for a bit. I heard a noise in the hallway. The floorboards creaked. It was not the heavy tread of Hunter. It was lighter. Gabrielle. I fumbled to hang up the phone to shove it back into my sock, but my fingers, usually so nimble, stiffened with panic. The lock on the door clicked. I shoved the phone under my thigh just as the door swung open. Gabrielle stood there holding a tray with a glass of water and a single slice of bread. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red, but her expression was hard. She looked at me huddled in the wheelchair in the corner, wearing the rags her husband had chosen for me. I brought you some food, she said, her voice flat. You need to eat something before the party. Thank you, baby, I said, trying to sound grateful, trying to sound like her father. She walked over and set the tray on the dresser. Then she stopped. She frowned. She tilted her head, listening. What is that noise? She asked. I froze. I had not silenced the phone. I had not turned it off. And at that exact moment, Annalise sent a confirmation text. The phone vibrated against the leather seat of the wheelchair with a loud, buzzing hum. Gabrielle's eyes snapped to my lap. She lunged. Before I could react, she grabbed my arm and shoved me back against the chair. She reached under my leg and pulled out the phone. She stared at it as if it were a bomb, a cheap black burner phone glowing with a text message. What is this? She whispered. Where did you get this? I found it. I stammered, my mind racing. In the park. I just wanted to play games. She looked at the screen. She read the text. The team is ready. Her face went pale, then flushed a deep, violent red. She looked at me, and the mask of the dutiful daughter fell away completely. Beneath it was pure, unadulterated hatred. You are not senile, she hissed. You are not sick. You have been lying to us. She threw the phone against the wall. It shattered into pieces, plastic and battery flying across the room. Who are you talking to? She screamed. Who is the team? I said nothing. I could not lie my way out of this. I just stared at her, trying to find a trace of the little girl I had pushed on the swings, but she was gone. She raised her hand. I flinched, expecting a scolding, expecting her to yell. But she did not just yell. She slapped me. It was a hard, stinging blow across the face. My head snapped to the side. My glasses flew off and skittered across the floor. I tasted blood on my lip. I sat there stunned. My daughter, my Gabrielle. She had hit me. She had struck her own father. You think you are smart? She spat, shaking her hand. You think you can spy on us? You think you can ruin this for us? She grabbed the lapels of my old suit and shook me. You are going to sign those papers, Dad. You are going to sign them, and then you are going to die. I am done waiting. I am done pretending. She let go of me, and I slumped back in the chair. She paced the room, breathing hard. Hunter, she yelled. Hunter, get up here. Hunter came running up the stairs. What? What is it? He has a phone, Gabrielle screamed, pointing at the debris on the floor. He has been talking to someone. He knows Hunter. He knows everything. He is faking it. Hunter looked at the broken phone, then at me. His eyes went cold, deadly cold. He did not yell. He did not panic. He walked over to me and leaned down until we were nose to nose. So the old engineer still has some tricks, he said softly. Who did you call Elijah? The police. I said nothing. I stared him down, letting him see the hate in my eyes. It does not matter, he said, standing up, because nobody is coming to help you. We are moving the timeline up. He grabbed the handles of the wheelchair. Where are you taking him? Gabrielle asked. To the hole, Hunter said. He wheeled me out of the room, down the hallway, and to the narrow door that led to the basement. He unlocked it and kicked it open. Get up, he ordered. I did not move. He grabbed me by the collar and hauled me out of the chair, throwing me onto the floor. I scrambled backward, but he was too fast. He dragged me to the top of the stairs. Walk or I throw you down, he said. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked down the wooden steps into the darkness. The air was musty and cold. It smelled of earth and old secrets. He followed me down. He walked to the corner where the old coal chute used to be a small windowless room with a heavy iron door. He shoved me inside. There is no light in there, Hunter said, standing in the doorway. There is no bed. There is no water. Gabrielle came down the stairs. She stood behind him, looking over his shoulder. Leave him, she said. Let him rot for 2 days. By the time the party starts, he will be so weak and thirsty he will sign anything just for a glass of water. 48 hours, Hunter said. 48 hours in the dark, Elijah. Think about your choices. Think about Coretta. She died so you could live and you threw it away. He slammed the iron door shut. The sound was like a gunshot. I heard the heavy deadbolt slide home. Then I heard their footsteps going back up the stairs. I was in total darkness. The silence was absolute. I felt my way around the small room, concrete walls, dirt floor, dirt. It was a tomb. I sat down in the corner, pulling my knees to my chest. My cheek still burned from Gabrielle's slap. My heart ached from her betrayal. They thought this was the end. They thought breaking my phone and locking me in the dark would break my spirit. They thought hunger and thirst would make me compliant. But they had forgotten one thing. I was a structural engineer. I knew how this house was built because I had restored it myself 40 years ago. I knew where the pipes ran. I knew where the wires were. And I knew that directly behind the wall I was leaning against ran the main telephone line for the entire house. The old copper wire line that I had never disconnected because Coretta liked having a landline for emergencies. They had taken my cell phone, but they had locked me in a room with the central nervous system of the house. I reached into the pocket of my old suit. Hunter had not searched me. He had been too focused on the humiliation. My fingers closed around the small multi-tool I always kept on my keychain. I smiled in the darkness. 48 hours. That was plenty of time. I opened the blade of the multi-tool and felt for the seam in the drywall. You made a mistake, Hunter, I whispered. You put the engineer in the engine room. I began to cut. I sat in the suffocating darkness of the coal chute and listened to the silence of the house above me. It had been nearly 40 hours since they locked me in. My throat was parched dry as sandpaper, and my stomach had stopped growling hours ago, settling into a dull, cramping ache. They thought they were breaking me. They thought the hunger and the isolation would reduce me to a compliant child ready to sign anything for a sip of water. But they had made a critical error in their calculations. They had forgotten that hunger clarifies the mind. It sharpens the senses. And they had forgotten that I built this house. I pressed my ear against the cold concrete wall. I could hear the faint hum of the electricity running through the conduits. I knew exactly where the main lines ran. Behind the drywall to my left was the junction box for the old copper telephone system. Hunter had cut the lines in the kitchen and the study, thinking he had severed my connection to the world. But he did not know about the redundancy protocols I had installed after the blackout of '77. I had wired the fire alarm system into a dedicated hard line buried in the foundation, a line that bypassed the domestic switchboard entirely. It was designed to send a distress signal to the monitoring station even if the house burned down around it. I pulled out my multi-tool. The blade was small but sharp. I felt for the seam in the drywall where the plaster met the concrete foundation. I began to scrape. The sound was loud in the small space, a rhythmic scratching like a rat in the walls. I worked slowly, pausing every few minutes to listen for footsteps upstairs. I could not afford to be caught now. The dust coated my fingers and stung my eyes, but I kept going until I felt the smooth plastic sheathing of the cable bundle. I carefully sliced through the insulation. My hands were shaking from low blood sugar, but my engineer brain took over. I separated the wires. Red, green, yellow, black. I needed to bridge the alarm circuit to send a specific trouble code. A code that would not trigger the sirens but would send a silent alert to the monitoring company. And Annalise had subpoenaed the monitoring logs days ago. She had a team watching that specific frequency, waiting for a pulse. I stripped the ends of the copper wires. I took a deep breath. This had to be precise. If I crossed the wrong wires, I would set off the general alarm and Hunter would come down here and likely finish what he started on the mountain. I touched the red wire to the black, creating a short. Sparks flew, illuminating the dark room for a fraction of a second. I held it for 3 seconds, then released. Then again. 3 seconds. Release. 3 seconds. Release. It was a heartbeat. A digital pulse sent out through the buried lines under the city. I sat back against the wall, sweating despite the cold. I had done it. The signal was sent. Now I just had to wait. I had to survive the next few hours and save my strength for the performance of a lifetime. I closed my eyes and visualized the schematic of the Grand Hotel ballroom. I visualized the load-bearing columns and the steel trusses. I visualized Hunter standing on that stage, and I visualized myself bringing the whole structure down on top of him. Time lost its meaning in the dark. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my dreams filled with green smoothies and falling bodies. Then the sound of the deadbolt sliding back snapped me awake. The heavy iron door groaned open and blinding light flooded the small room. I threw my arm over my eyes, cowering like a frightened animal. It was part of the act, but the pain in my eyes was real. "Get him up," I heard Hunter say. He smelled of expensive cologne and excitement. 2 large men I did not recognize grabbed me by the arms and hauled me to my feet. My legs buckled. I was weak, truly weak this time. They dragged me up the stairs, my feet bumping against the wooden steps. They took me to the bathroom and stripped off my filthy clothes. They scrubbed me down with rough sponges, washing away the dirt of the basement but leaving the stench of fear. They dressed me in the old paint-stained suit Hunter had chosen. It hung on my emaciated frame, making me look like a scarecrow. Hunter came in and inspected me. He adjusted my tie, leaving it crooked. He messed up my hair. "Perfect," he said, grinning at my reflection in the mirror. "You look like death warmed over. The investors are going to eat this up." He leaned in close, his face inches from mine. "Remember the deal, Elijah. You sign the papers on stage, you smile, you shake my hand, and then you get to go to the nice facility with the garden. You mess this up and you go back in the hole, and next time I weld the door shut." I nodded, my eyes fixed on the floor. I let a string of drool escape my lip. I was ready. The ride to the hotel was a blur. I sat in the back of a tinted SUV flanked by the 2 guards. Hunter and Gabrielle sat in the front talking excitedly about the guest list. They ignored me completely, as if I were a piece of luggage. When we arrived, they brought me in through the service entrance, avoiding the press, avoiding anyone who might look too closely at the bruises on my wrists. They put me in the wheelchair and pushed me into a small holding area behind the main stage. I could hear the murmur of the crowd on the other side of the velvet curtain. It sounded like the ocean, the clinking of glasses, the polite laughter of the city elite. Hunter had really done it. He had gathered everyone who mattered. The music swelled. A dramatic orchestral piece that sounded like the soundtrack to a coronation. I heard the MC announce Hunter name. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man who is carrying the Freeman legacy into the future, Mr. Hunter Vance." Thunderous applause. I listened as Hunter took the microphone. His voice was smooth, practiced, oozing with false humility. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight is a bittersweet night. We are here to celebrate the 70th birthday of a titan, my father-in-law, Elijah Freeman, a man who built foundations in this city literally and figuratively." He paused for effect. I could imagine him wiping away a fake tear. But as many of you know, time comes for us all. Elijah has been struggling since the tragic passing of his beloved Coretta. His mind is not what it used to be. It breaks my heart to see such a strong man reduced to confusion and fear. But that is why family is so important. Gabrielle and I have made a vow to protect him, to protect his legacy, and tonight we are making that promise official. The applause was softer this time, sympathetic. He was playing them like a fiddle. "Please welcome the man of the hour, Elijah Freeman." The curtain was pulled back. One of the guards pushed my wheelchair forward. The stage lights hit me like a physical blow, blinding white and hot. I squinted, blinking rapidly, letting my head loll to one side. I heard a collective gasp from the audience. They saw a broken man. They saw a skeleton in a dirty suit huddled in a rusting wheelchair. I saw pity in their eyes. I saw women covering their mouths. I saw men shaking their heads. Hunter walked over to me, his face the picture of concern. He knelt beside the wheelchair, placing a hand on my shoulder. He squeezed hard, digging his thumb into my collarbone, a silent warning. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice amplified by the microphone booming through the ballroom. "Look at all these people here to honor you." I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw bankers. I saw politicians. I saw the loan sharks standing in the back in their ill-fitting suits. And then near the front, I saw a table reserved for the legal team. I saw Annalise. She was looking at me, her face unreadable, but she gave a nearly imperceptible nod. The signal was received. The trap was primed. Hunter stood up and gestured to a small podium that had been brought out. On it lay the document, the power of attorney. A gold pen lay beside it, gleaming under the lights. "Dad," Hunter said, guiding the wheelchair toward the podium. "It is time. We want to take care of you. We want to make sure you are safe. Just sign the paper and we can all celebrate." He locked the brakes of the wheelchair. He picked up the pen and tried to press it into my hand. My fingers were limp. I let the pen slip and fall to the floor with a clatter. "Oops." Hunter laughed nervously, picking it up. "A bit of nerves. Do not worry, Dad, I will help you." He grabbed my hand and forced the pen into my fingers, wrapping his own hand around mine. He began to guide my hand toward the paper, forcing me to move. The audience watched in silence. It was a grotesque display, a forced abdication. I felt the tip of the pen touch the paper. This was the moment, the point of no return. I looked at Hunter. I looked at his face, shining with sweat and greed. I looked at Gabrielle, standing in the wings, watching with cold calculation. They thought I was finished. They thought I was a corpse that just hadn't stopped breathing yet. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of expensive perfume and ozone. I tightened my grip on the pen, not to sign, but to hold it like a weapon. I stopped my hand. I resisted his pressure. Hunter froze. He looked down at me, his smile faltering. "Dad, sign it," he hissed through his teeth so only I could hear. "Sign it, or you die tonight." I looked up at him, and for the first time in weeks I let him see me. I let the fog clear from my eyes. I let the strength return to my spine. I let him see the engineer who calculated the collapse of structures for a living. "No, Hunter," I said. My voice was not a raspy whisper. It was deep. It was resonant. It was the voice that had commanded construction crews on sites 50 stories in the air. The microphone picked it up perfectly, broadcasting it to every corner of the silent ballroom. Hunter pulled back as if he had been burned. "What?" I placed my hands on the armrests of the wheelchair. I pushed. My legs, which I had been exercising in secret every night in my room, held firm. I stood up. I rose from the chair, shedding the persona of the invalid like a heavy coat. I stood to my full height of 6 feet 2 inches. I towered over Hunter. The gasp from the audience sucked the air out of the room. Hunter stumbled back, his face draining of color. Gabrielle stepped out from the wings, her hands flying to her mouth. I grabbed the microphone from the stand. I looked out at the stunned crowd. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice booming. "I appreciate you being here to witness this. My son-in-law wanted a show. He wanted you to see a transfer of power." I turned to look at Hunter, who was trembling now, looking around for his security guards. "Well," I continued, a cold smile playing on my lips. "I am going to give you a show. But it is not the one he planned." I looked at Annalise. "Now." The huge projection screen behind me, which had been displaying a slideshow of family photos, suddenly went black. Then it flickered to life with a grainy video feed. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a vacuum of sound that sucked the breath out of every man and woman in the room. I stood center stage, my spine straight, my shoulders squared, looking nothing like the trembling invalid who had been wheeled in moments before. I kicked the rusting wheelchair with the heel of my boot. It rolled across the stage and toppled over the edge, crashing onto the floor of the orchestra pit with a loud metallic clamor that made the front row jump. It was a violent, deliberate sound, the sound of a shackle being broken. Hunter stood frozen, his hand still reaching out for the pen I had refused to take. His face was the color of old ash, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the water. He looked at my legs, then at my face, unable to comprehend the transformation. The arrogance that had defined him for years, the smug certainty that he was the predator and I was the prey, evaporated in an instant, leaving behind only naked terror. I lifted the microphone to my lips. My hand was steady. My voice, when it boomed through the high-quality speakers of the Grand Hotel, was a force of nature, deep and resonant, carrying the weight of 70 years of life and labor. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my eyes sweeping across the crowd of stunned investors and socialites. "My son-in-law Hunter promised you a show tonight. He promised you a spectacle. He told you that you were here to witness the passing of a torch, the benevolent care of a loving family for a failing patriarch. He told you that I was broken. He told you that I was confused. He told you that I was ready to die." I took a step toward Hunter, forcing him to take a stumbling step back. "But Hunter is a liar," I thundered. "And tonight you are not here to witness a retirement. You are here to witness an indictment." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw confusion turning into fascination. I saw the loan sharks in the back straighten up, sensing blood in the water. I saw Gabrielle standing in the wings, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a fear that went beyond the loss of money. She knew what was coming. Hunter finally found his voice. It was a high-pitched squeak, a desperate attempt to regain control of a narrative that was spiraling into chaos. "He is having an episode," Hunter shouted, waving his arms at the security guards. "He is delirious. Someone grab him. He does not know what he is saying. Get the sedation." The guards, two large men hired by Annalise, not Hunter, did not move. They stood with their arms crossed, staring impassively at the man who thought he had bought their loyalty. "I am not delirious, Hunter," I said, my voice cutting through his panic like a knife. "I am the most lucid man in this room, and I am done playing your game." I looked up at the projection booth at the back of the room. I raised my hand. "Play it," I commanded. The lights in the ballroom dimmed, plunging the audience into semi-darkness. The massive screen behind me, which had been displaying a loop of carefully curated family photos, went black for a second. Then it flickered to life. The image was grainy, shot from a low angle from the perspective of a teddy bear sitting on a shelf, but the audio was crystal clear, amplified to concert volume. The video showed my kitchen, the morning sun streaming through the window. It showed Hunter standing at the counter whistling a cheerful tune as he chopped kale and spinach. The date stamp in the corner read, 6 months ago. The audience watched in confused silence, unsure of what they were seeing. Then Hunter reached into the cabinet under the sink. He pulled out a yellow canister labeled with a skull and crossbones. Rat poison, arsenic-based. A collective gasp swept through the room. On the screen, Hunter measured out a teaspoon of the powder and dumped it into the blender. He blended it with the greens, the noise of the appliance filling the silent ballroom. Then the video cut to him walking into the living room, handing the glass to Coretta. "My wife, my beautiful, trusting wife." "Drink up, Mom," Hunter's voice boomed from the speakers. "It will make you strong." Coretta smiled on the screen and took a sip. I heard a woman in the front row scream. I saw men covering their mouths. Hunter turned to look at the screen, his eyes bulging. "No," he whispered. "That is not real. That is a deepfake. He made it up." But the video continued. It cut to another scene. This one was darker, shot at night in the living room. Hunter and Gabrielle were drinking wine, laughing. The old lady finally kicked the bucket, Hunter said on screen, clinking his glass against Gabrielle. "About time. I thought she would never die. Now we just have to clear out the brownstone, get rid of all that African junk, whitewash the place. Maybe then we can sell it to civilized people." The racism was naked and ugly, hanging in the air like a foul smell. The investors in the room, many of whom prided themselves on their progressive image, recoiled. I saw the bank representative who had been so eager to shake Hunter's hand earlier wipe his palm on his pants as if he had touched something filthy. Gabrielle's voice came next, clear and sharp. "I do not care about the house, Hunter. I just want the money. Is the old man dead yet? Did you up the dose on his heart pills?" The video cut again. This time it was the audio from the basement, the conversation they thought was private. 48 hours in the dark. Hunter's voice sneered. "Let him rot. By Saturday, he will sign anything just for water. If he does not, we will just drive him to the state asylum and dump him. Who is going to believe a senile old man over his loving family?" The screen went black. The lights came back up blindingly bright. The silence that followed was heavy with horror. It was the silence of a crowd that had just realized they were sharing a room with monsters. Every eye was fixed on Hunter and Gabrielle. They were stripped bare, their expensive clothes and charming smiles unable to hide the rot beneath. Hunter looked at the crowd. He saw the disgust. He saw the anger. He saw his future evaporating. The loan sharks were already moving toward the exits, pulling out their phones, probably to put a hit on him or to cut their losses. The investors were whispering frantically to their lawyers. "You tricked me!" Hunter screamed, turning back to me. His face was purple veins bulging in his neck. "You old bastard! You set me up!" He was losing his mind. The narcissist cannot handle exposure. He cannot handle the truth. He snapped. "I will kill you!" he roared. He lunged. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands reaching for my throat. He wanted to silence me. He wanted to crush the source of his humiliation. He forgot who I was. He forgot that before I was an engineer sitting at a desk, I was a laborer. I had carried steel beams on my shoulders. I had swung sledgehammers for 10 hours a day. I was 70 years old, but my muscles were built on a lifetime of struggle, not a lifetime of gym memberships and protein shakes. I did not retreat. I planted my feet. I dropped the microphone. As Hunter reached for me, I stepped inside his guard. I grabbed his expensive silk tie with my left hand, yanking him forward off balance. With my right hand, I formed a fist that was as hard as the concrete I used to pour. I put 40 years of rage into that punch. I put the grief for Coretta into it. I put the hunger of the last 2 days into it. My fist connected with his jaw with a sickening crunch. It was the sound of bone meeting justice. Hunter's feet left the floor. He spun in the air and crashed onto the stage, landing in a heap of tangled limbs and broken pride. He did not get up. He lay there groaning, blood pouring from his mouth, staining the white carpet of the stage. I stood over him, breathing hard, my knuckles throbbing. I adjusted my cuffs. I looked down at him with nothing but contempt. "You should have checked the structural integrity of your opponent," I said, my voice carrying to the front row without the microphone. "You built your house on sand, Hunter, and the tide just came in." Gabrielle ran onto the stage. I thought she was coming to help him. I thought she was coming to attack me. But she stopped halfway, looking between me and her fallen husband. She looked at the crowd. She saw the police officers entering from the back of the room, led by Dr. Evans and Annalise. She realized it was over. "Daddy!" she wailed, dropping to her knees, her hands clasped in supplication. "Daddy, please." He forced me. I did not want to do it. He made me. He said he would hurt me if I did not help him. I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I had taught to ride a bike, the girl I had walked down the aisle. I looked at her and I saw the woman on the video asking if I was dead yet. I saw the woman who had thrown away her mother clothes like garbage. I felt a crack in my heart, a fissure that would never heal. But I also felt a resolve that was unbreakable. "Get up, Gabrielle," I said, my voice cold as ice. She scrambled up, reaching for me, trying to hug me. I stepped back, letting her arms grasp at empty air. "Do not touch me," I said. "Daddy, I am your daughter," she sobbed. "I am your baby girl. You have to help me. They are going to arrest me." I looked her in the eye. I looked deep, searching for any spark of the child I had loved, but there was nothing there, just greed and fear. "My daughter died 6 months ago," I said, my voice flat. "She died the day she watched her husband poison her mother and said nothing. She died the day she decided money was worth more than blood." I pointed to the police officers who were marching down the aisle, handcuffs gleaming under the stage lights. "You are not my daughter," I said. "You are an accessory to murder, and you are on your own." Gabrielle screamed a raw sound of terror as the officers swarmed the stage. They hauled Hunter up, dragging him to his feet. He was dazed, his jaw swelling rapidly, spitting blood and teeth. They cuffed his hands behind his back. Other officers grabbed Gabrielle, who was kicking and screaming, pulling her away from me. I watched them go. I watched them being dragged through the crowd of shocked onlookers. Flashbulbs went off as the press, who had been waiting outside sensing a story, rushed in. I stood alone on the stage. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me tired, bone-tired. But I was still standing. Annalise walked up the steps onto the stage. She handed me a bottle of water. I took a long drink, washing the taste of the basement out of my mouth. "You did it, Uncle Elijah," she whispered. "You really did it." I looked out at the crowd. They were still staring at me, waiting for something. A speech, an explanation. I picked up the microphone from the floor. "The show is over," I said. "Go home, call your parents, tell them you love them, and be careful who you mix your smoothies with." I dropped the microphone again. I turned and walked off the stage, leaving the ruins of my family behind me. I had one more thing to do, one more secret to reveal, and this one was going to hurt Hunter more than the punch. I walked toward the exit where the police were holding Hunter and Gabrielle waiting for the transport van. I needed them to hear one last thing. "Wait," I said to the officers. They stopped. Hunter looked up at me, his eyes swollen shut, his mouth a ruin. Gabrielle was sobbing quietly. "I just wanted you to know," I said, leaning in close to Hunter's ear. "You spent so much time looking for the insurance money. You spent so much time trying to sell the house. You thought I was a poor mechanic with a lucky property." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small leather ledger I had saved from the bookshelf. I held it up. "I am not a mechanic, Hunter. I am a structural engineer. I hold 12 patents for seismic isolation. Every time a skyscraper is built in this city, I get paid. Every time a bridge is retrofitted, I get paid." Hunter Goodeye widened. He stopped struggling. "I am worth $40 million, I whispered. "And you were so busy trying to steal a $500,000 house that you missed the empire." He made a sound, a strangled cry of pure agony. It was the sound of a man realizing he had fumbled a winning lottery ticket because he was too busy trying to steal the change from the cashier register. And the best part, I continued. "Coretta transferred the house to a charitable trust 6 months ago. You killed her for a house you could never inherit. You killed her for nothing." Hunter fell to his knees weeping, not from remorse, but from the sheer magnitude of his loss. "Take them away," I said to the officers. "Get them out of my sight." I walked out of the hotel and into the night air. It was raining, a soft, cleansing rain. I let it wash over my face. I was alone. I had no wife. I had no daughter. But I was alive. And I had a grandson to find. The war was over. The rebuilding could begin. The ballroom was in chaos, a symphony of flashing cameras and murmuring voices that rose to a fever pitch. Hunter was on his knees, his expensive suit ruined by the dust of the stage and his own blood. The police officers held him firmly, but he was thrashing like a wounded animal fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and pure denial. He looked up at me, his face a mask of purple bruises and swelling, but his eyes were still burning with that same arrogant fire. He could not accept defeat. He could not accept that the man he had tormented for months, the man he had dismissed as a senile relic, was standing over him as a conqueror. "You are lying," Hunter screamed, spitting blood onto the pristine white stage. "Do not listen to him. He is insane. He is a broke mechanic who spent his life fixing carburetors in a garage. He has nothing. That house is a teardown. He is hallucinating. He thinks he is rich, but he is just a senile old man living on a pension. Check his bank accounts. He has nothing." The crowd quieted slightly, waiting to see how I would respond. Hunter's words hung in the air, desperate and shrill. He was trying to reclaim the narrative, trying to paint me as the villain one last time. He was betting everything on the assumption that he knew me. He thought he knew Elijah Freeman, the man who wore stained cardigans and drove a 20-year-old truck. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. The movement was slow and deliberate. I pulled out the ledger. It was a small book, bound in cracked black leather, the pages yellowed with age. It looked like trash. It looked like something you would find in a bargain bin at a flea market. Hunter sneered when he saw it. "Look at that!" Hunter laughed hysterically. "What is that, Elijah? Your diary, your grocery list. You are pathetic." I walked to the edge of the stage. I held the book up so the light caught the worn leather. "You asked who I am. Hunter," I said, my voice calm and projecting to the back of the room without a tremor. "You told everyone I was a mechanic. You told everyone I fixed cars." I opened the book to the first page. "I did fix things," I continued. "But I did not fix cars. I fixed cities." I turned the page, my finger tracing a line of faded ink. "In 1982, I developed a variable friction damper system for high-rise construction. It prevents buildings from swaying in high winds. I sold the patent to a multinational firm for $2 million and a 4% royalty on every unit installed." A gasp went through the room. I saw a man in the front row, a prominent architect whose firm was based in the city, adjust his glasses and lean forward. In 1990, I turned the page again, the sound of the paper crisp in the silence. "I designed a retrofitting technique for reinforced concrete bridges. It is currently used on the Golden Gate Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge. That patent still yields 6 figures a quarter." Hunter stopped struggling. His mouth hung open. The blood on his chin was forgotten. "You see this hotel?" I asked, stomping my foot on the stage floor. The impact echoed through the room. You are standing in the Grand Hotel. When they built this extension 5 years ago, they discovered the soil was unstable. They were going to cancel the project. They called me. I designed the pile foundation system that keeps this roof from collapsing on your head right now. I looked directly at the architect in the front row. Ask him, I said, pointing. Ask Mr. Henderson, who consulted on the foundation of the Grand. Mr. Henderson stood up slowly, looking at me with wide eyes. My God, he whispered. You are E. Freeman. We thought you were a firm. We thought you were a team of engineers in Zurich. We never met you. All the checks went to a blind trust. I am the firm, I said, and I am the trust. I turned back to Hunter. He looked like he had been hit by a truck. The reality was crashing down on him harder than my fist ever could. The man he had tried to kill for a few $100,000 was the invisible architect of half the city skyline. I hold 12 active patents, Hunter, I said, flipping through the pages of the ledger. I own commercial real estate in 3 states. I have investments in tech firms that you use every day. I do not live in a brownstone because I have to. I live there because I built it with my own hands for the woman I loved. I live there because it is home. I closed the book with a snap. You called me a broke mechanic. You called me a burden. You wanted to steal my pension checks. I leaned down, getting close to his face again so he could see the truth burning in my eyes. I am worth $42 million, Hunter, and you just threw away the only winning lottery ticket you ever held. Hunter let out a sound that was not human. It was a keen of pure agony. It was the sound of a man watching a mountain of gold turn to ash in his hands. He slumped in the arms of the police officers, his legs giving out. He realized that if he had just been a decent human being, if he had just loved his wife and respected his in-laws, if he had just waited, he would have had everything. He would have been the heir to an empire. Instead, he was a murderer going to prison with nothing. But I was not done. The money was only half the story. There was still the matter of the house, the brownstone that started it all. Gabrielle was standing near the police van, sobbing into her hands. She looked up when she heard the number 42 million. Her eyes lit up with a flicker of hope, a desperate, greedy spark. She pushed against the officer holding her. Daddy, she cried. Daddy, I did not know. I am sorry. Please. We can fix this. I am your daughter. You cannot let them take me. I will be good. I promise. She thought the money could save her. She thought that because I was rich, I could buy her freedom. She thought she could still get a piece of the pie. I walked over to the edge of the stage, looking down at her. You want the money, Gabrielle, I asked. You want the inheritance? Yes, Daddy, please, she begged, nodding frantically. I will do anything. And the house, I asked, the brownstone you wanted to sell, the one you said was an eyesore, the one you wanted to whitewash. She hesitated, sensing a trap, but her greed pushed her forward. It is a beautiful house, Daddy. We can keep it. We can renovate it. Just get me out of here. I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. You cannot have the house, Gabrielle. Nobody can. I pulled another document from my jacket pocket. It was a copy of the deed transfer stamped and notarized 6 months ago. Your mother knew, I said, my voice breaking slightly at the mention of Coretta. She knew what you were doing. She knew you were poisoning her. And she knew you would come for the house the moment she was gone. So she made a decision. I held up the document. 6 months ago, Coretta Freeman transferred the deed of the property at 424 Maple Street to the Coretta Freeman Charitable Trust. Gabrielle's face went slack. What? It is not a house anymore, I said. It is a shelter. It is a safe haven for victims of domestic abuse and elder financial exploitation. It belongs to the city now. It belongs to the people you despise. Hunter's head snapped up. No, he croaked. No, that is impossible. We checked the records. It was in your name. I smiled. You checked the public records, Hunter. You checked the online database, which updates every 6 months. You did not check the county clerk office. You were lazy. And the insurance money, I continued, relentlessly twisting the knife. The $2 million policy on Coretta Life. The one you needed to pay off Tony. Hunter's eyes widened. He had forgotten about Tony in the chaos. He looked toward the back of the room, but the loan sharks were gone. They had seen enough. They knew he was a dead man walking. You filed the claim, I said. You thought it would pay out in 30 days. But you forgot about the Slayer statute. I turned to the audience, addressing them as if I were giving a lecture on law. For those of you who do not know, the Slayer statute prohibits a person from inheriting property or insurance money from someone they murdered. I looked back at Hunter and Gabrielle. The moment Dr. Evans filed that toxicology report with the police, the policy was frozen. The insurance company is conducting their own investigation. And once you are convicted, that money does not go to you. It does not even go to me. It goes into the trust. It goes to the shelter. Hunter fell forward onto his knees, dragging the police officers with him. He was weeping openly now. Ugly, snotty sobs of a man who has lost everything. $20 million, Gabrielle screamed, tearing at her hair. We lost $20 million. For nothing. We killed her for nothing. Her confession rang out across the ballroom. It was the final nail. She had admitted it in front of 100 witnesses and a dozen cameras. You did not just lose the money, I said, my voice quiet and final. You lost your souls. You traded your mother life for a debt you could never pay. You traded your father love for a house you could never own. I signaled to the police. Get them out of here. As they dragged them away, Hunter kicking and screaming, Gabrielle sobbing and begging, I stood alone on the stage. I felt a great weight lift from my shoulders. The secret was out. The trap had sprung. The foundation of their lies had crumbled, and I was the only one left standing in the rubble. I looked at the ledger in my hand. 40 years of work. 40 years of building. It had not saved Coretta. It could not bring her back. But it had given me the power to avenge her. It had given me the hammer to smash the serpents that had invaded our garden. I put the book back in my pocket. I straightened my tie. I looked at Annalise, who was smiling through tears. We are done here, I said. But the night was not over. Hunter was going to prison, but his fall was going to be much harder than just a jail cell. I had one last message to deliver to him. A message that would ensure his time behind bars was a living hell. I walked down the steps of the stage and headed for the exit following the police. I needed to say goodbye. The heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom flew open with a violence that made the crystal chandeliers tremble overhead. It was not the wind. It was the law. A dozen uniformed officers flooded the room, their movements precise and coordinated, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding on the stage. Leading them was Detective Miller, a man I had spoken to only hours ago in a secure location provided by Annalise. Beside him walked Dr. Evans, clutching a thick file of medical documents to his chest like a shield. The sight of my old friend, his face grim and determined, was the final piece of the trap snapping shut. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. These were the city elite, the investors, the socialites, and none of them wanted to be anywhere near the blast zone of a criminal investigation. They pressed themselves against the silk-covered walls, their phones raised, recording every second of the downfall. The flashing lights from the police cruisers outside painted the ballroom in strobing hues of blue and red, turning the opulent space into a crime scene. Hunter was still on his knees where I had left him, his suit ruined, his face a mask of blood and snot. When he saw the uniforms, his survival instinct kicked in, but it was the frantic, useless thrashing of a trapped animal. He tried to scramble backward, crab walking across the stage, his eyes darting, looking for an exit that did not exist. Get away from me, Hunter screamed, his voice cracking. I did not do anything. This is a mistake. That old man is crazy. He is framing me. Check his mental records. He is senile. Detective Miller marched up the stairs to the stage, his boots thudding heavily on the wood. He did not look at me. His focus was entirely on the man attempting to crawl away. He reached down and grabbed Hunter by the back of his expensive jacket, hauling him upright with little effort. Two other officers moved in, flanking Hunter, grabbing his arms and twisting them behind his back. The click of the handcuffs ratcheting tight was loud enough to be heard over the murmurs of the crowd. Hunter Vance Detective Miller boomed, his voice authoritative and calm. You are under arrest. Hunter writhed in their grip, spitting blood onto the officer uniform. For what he yelled. I want my lawyer. You cannot touch me. Do you know who I am? We know exactly who you are, Detective Miller replied, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. He snapped it open and began to read. You are charged with the first-degree murder of Coretta Freeman. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Hunter stopped struggling. His body went limp as if his skeleton had suddenly dissolved. The charge was not fraud. It was not elder abuse. It was murder, the ultimate crime. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sounded like a vacuum. The detective continued reading relentlessly. You are also charged with conspiracy to commit murder against Elijah Freeman. attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and racketeering. Hunter looked at Dr. Evans, who was standing at the edge of the stage. Dr. Evans held up the toxicology report, the red graph lines visible even from a distance. I found the arsenic, Hunter, Dr. Evans said, his voice cutting through the silence. I found the receipts. I found the supplier you paid in cash. And I gave it all to the police. Coretta Body told us everything. Hunter's face crumbled. The arrogance, the entitlement, the belief that he was smarter than everyone in the room, it all shattered. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for a mercy he had never shown my wife. "Elijah," he whimpered. "Elijah, tell them. Tell them it was an accident. Tell them I took care of you." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had mixed poison into my wife's breakfast every morning for 6 months. I looked at the man who had laughed about selling my home to civilized people. "You took care of nothing," I said, my voice cold. "You dug 2 graves, Hunter. But you forgot to check if we were actually dead before you tried to bury us." "Take him away," Detective Miller ordered. As they dragged Hunter off the stage, his feet dragging uselessly behind him, the reality of his future settled in. He was not going to a country club prison. He was going to a maximum security facility where his soft hands and expensive suits would make him prey. He screamed my name one last time before the heavy double doors swallowed him up, leaving only the echo of his desperation. But the night was not over. There was one more loose end, one more betrayal that needed to be addressed. Gabrielle was kneeling on the stage floor where she had fallen when the police arrived. She was not handcuffed yet. She watched her husband being dragged away, her eyes wide with terror, but as soon as the doors closed, a shift occurred in her demeanor. I watched it happen. I watched the calculation behind her tears. She saw that the ship was sinking, and she decided she was not going down with the captain. She turned her gaze to me. She wiped the snot from her nose with the back of her hand. She fixed her hair. She composed her face into a mask of tragic victimhood. She crawled toward me on her knees, ignoring the officers who were moving to intercept her. She reached out her hands, trembling perfectly. "Daddy," she sobbed, her voice pitching up into a register she hadn't used since she was 10 years old. "Daddy, thank God. Thank God they took him." I stood still, looking down at her. This was my daughter. This was the baby I had rocked to sleep when she had colic. This was the girl I had taught to solve math problems. This was the woman who had watched me eat canned tuna in a dark room and laughed about it. "He made me do it, Daddy," she cried, grabbing the hem of my trousers. "You have to believe me. Hunter is a monster. He beat me. He threatened me. He said he would kill me if I did not help him. I was so scared. I just wanted to protect you." She buried her face against my leg, weeping loudly. It was a performance worthy of Broadway. It was the act of a woman who thought she could manipulate her way out of a murder charge because she was daddy little girl. She thought I was still the soft father who couldn't say no to her. She thought my love was a weakness she could exploit one last time. I looked at Annalise standing nearby. Her face was hard, unyielding. She knew the truth. She had seen the videos. She knew there was no coercion in those recordings, only eager participation. Gabrielle looked up at me, her eyes shining with tears that looked real enough to fool anyone who hadn't seen her true face. "Please, Daddy, tell them. Tell them to let me go. I am the only family you have left. Mom is gone. Hunter is gone. It is just us now. We can start over. We can fix up the house together. Just you and me. Like it used to be. Just us." That was her play. She was banking on my loneliness. She was banking on the fear of an old man dying alone. She thought the prospect of solitude would terrify me enough to forgive the unforgivable. I reached down. Gabrielle's eyes lit up with hope. She thought I was going to pull her up. She thought I was going to hug her. I grabbed her hands, the hands that had thrown away her mother clothes, the hands that had signed the fraudulent papers. I peeled them off my leg. I held them for a second, feeling the warmth of her skin, the pulse in her wrists. "You are right, Gabrielle," I said, my voice soft but devoid of warmth. "Your mother is gone." "Yes," she nodded eagerly. "Yes, and we have to honor her memory. She would want us to be together. She would want you to forgive me." I dropped her hands as if they were covered in filth. "Your mother died to save me," I said, my voice rising, filling the silent ballroom. "She drank poison every day to buy my life, and you knew." Gabrielle flinched. "Daddy, You knew," I roared. "You watched her wither away. You watched her vomit blood. And you did nothing. You did not call the police. You did not call a doctor. You calculated how much her life insurance would cover of your husband gambling debts. I stepped back, putting distance between us. You are not a victim, Gabrielle. You are not a battered wife. I saw the videos. I heard you laughing. I heard you ask if I was dead yet. I heard you plan to put me in a state asylum. Daddy, please, she wailed, reaching for me again. I made a mistake. I am your flesh and blood. I looked at her. I looked at the DNA we shared. I looked at the history written in the curve of her nose and the shape of her eyes, and I felt nothing. The love I had for her had been burned out of me systematically over the last week. It had been replaced by a cold structural truth. A building with a rotten foundation cannot be saved. It must be condemned. You are not my flesh and blood, I said, my voice icy. You are a disease. You are a cancer that has been growing in this family for years, feeding on our love and our money. I signaled to Detective Miller. He stepped forward, pulling a second pair of handcuffs from his belt. Tonight I am cutting you out, I said. I am removing the tumor. Gabrielle screamed as the detective pulled her arms behind her back. No, Daddy, no. You cannot do this. I am your daughter. You are an accessory to first-degree murder, I corrected. And you are a stranger to me. Officer, get this woman out of my sight. Gabrielle fought. She kicked and screamed, abandoning the victim act for pure primal rage. She cursed me. She called me a senile old fool. She wished me dead. She revealed the face I had seen on the hidden camera, the face of pure greed. I turned my back on her. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every instinct in my body wanted to turn around, wanted to save her, wanted to believe her lies. But I kept my back straight. I fixed my eyes on the exit sign glowing red in the distance. I heard the doors open. I heard her screams fade into the hallway. I heard the silence rush back into the room. I did not look back. Not once. Looking back was for people who had a past worth saving. I had burned my past to the ground. Annalise stepped up beside me. She put a hand on my arm. Are you okay, Uncle Elijah? She asked gently. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of victory and ash. I was alone, truly alone. But I was alive, and I was free. I am fine, Annalise, I said. I just took out the trash. I walked toward the stairs of the stage, my steps heavy but steady. The crowd parted for me again, but this time there was no pity in their eyes. There was fear, and there was respect. They saw the engineer. They saw the man who had brought down his own house to kill the rats inside. I walked out of the ballroom and into the lobby. I needed fresh air. I needed to wash the feeling of Gabrielle hands off my pants. And then I had work to do. I had a shelter to build. And I had a grandson to find. The punishment was complete. Now it was time for the resurrection. The chaos in the ballroom had spilled over into the service corridors of the Grand Hotel. Hunter was not a man who accepted defeat gracefully. He was a creature of entitlement, and when the reality of the handcuffs loomed, he chose the coward path. He chose to run. I watched from the edge of the stage as he saw a momentary gap in the line of officers, a split-second distraction caused by a cameraman getting too close. Hunter shoved a young female officer aside with a desperate, violent heave, sending her stumbling into a waiter carrying a tray of crystal flutes. The sound of shattering glass was the starting gun. He bolted toward the heavy, swinging doors of the kitchen, his expensive Italian leather shoes slipping on the polished floor. He looked like a frantic rat searching for a sewer. "Stop him!" Detective Miller shouted, his voice booming over the din of the crowd. Two officers broke from the pack and sprinted after him, their hands on their holsters. I did not run. I did not need to run. I knew where those doors led. I knew the layout of this hotel because I had designed the loading dock foundation to support heavy delivery trucks. I knew it was a dead end unless you had a vehicle waiting, and Hunter had no one waiting for him, or so he thought. I followed the police at a steady walking pace, my heart beating with a cold, rhythmic thud. I walked through the kitchen past the startled chefs and the steaming pots of soup that would never be served. The air was thick with the smell of roasting meat and panic. I pushed through the rear exit doors and stepped out onto the concrete loading dock. The night air was biting and damp, the rain slicking the pavement with a sheen of oil and city grit. Hunter had made it to the edge of the dock. He was looking wildly left and right, searching for a taxi, a car, anything that could carry him away from the ruin of his life. But the alley was blocked. It was not blocked by police cars. It was blocked by a black luxury sedan with tinted windows, the engine idling with a low, menacing rumble. 3 men stood in the rain. They were not dressed in tuxedos. They wore heavy leather jackets and expressions of stone. In the center stood Tony, the man whose name I had heard on the surveillance tapes. The loan shark, the man Hunter owed $50,000 to. The man who did not care about inheritance laws or police investigations. He only cared about his money. Hunter skidded to a halt, his eyes widening in a terror that eclipsed even his fear of prison. He turned to run back inside, but the police were already pouring out of the kitchen doors, weapons drawn. He was trapped between the law and the street. Tony stepped forward, his hands in his pockets. He looked at Hunter with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. "You are leaving the party early, Hunter," Tony said, his voice smooth and dangerous like oil on water. "We were watching the live stream. It was very educational." Hunter held up his hands, trembling so hard he looked like he was vibrating. "Tony, please. I can explain. It was a setup. I have the money. I just need time." "You do not have the money," Tony interrupted. "You do not have the house. You do not have the insurance. You have nothing. And you know what happens when you have nothing, Hunter. You become a liability." Hunter screamed as the two men flanking Tony moved. It was a blur of violence. They did not care about the police standing 20 feet away. They did not care about the cameras that might be watching. They wanted to send a message. One of the men struck Hunter in the stomach with a force that lifted him off his feet. Hunter folded in half, gasping for air that would not come. The second man kicked his legs out from under him, sending him crashing onto the wet concrete. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was the consequences of a life lived on borrowed money and borrowed time finally coming due. Hunter curled into a fetal position, trying to protect his head as the blows rained down on him. He screamed for the police. He begged the officers to save him. "Help me!" he shrieked, blood spraying from his lip. "Arrest me. Please. Just arrest me." Detective Miller signaled his team. "Police, get down on the ground," he shouted, moving in with his weapon raised. The loan shark stopped instantly. They backed away, their hands raised in mock surrender, their faces bored. They had done what they came to do. They had marked him. Hunter lay on the ground, sobbing, broken and bleeding, his expensive suit torn and muddy. He crawled toward the officers, dragging himself across the wet pavement, leaving a smear of red behind him. He reached out for the handcuffs as if they were a lifeline. "Save me," he whimpered. "Do not let them touch me again." The officers swarmed him, hauling him up roughly. They slammed him against the wall of the loading dock and cuffed his hands behind his back. Hunter did not fight them this time. He sagged against the brick wall, weeping openly, his spirit completely shattered. The arrogance was gone. The pride was gone. All that was left was a terrified man who had realized too late that he was not the shark he thought he was. He was just the chum. I walked past the officers, past Tony, who gave me a slight respectful nod, which I did not return, and stood in front of Hunter. The rain dripped from the brim of my hat, masking the tears I had shed earlier, but doing nothing to hide the fire in my eyes. Hunter looked up at me through swollen eyes. He flinched, expecting me to hit him again. I did not raise my hand. I did not need to. My words were going to hurt him more than any fist. I stepped in close, invading his personal space just as he had done to me in the basement. I smelled the copper scent of his blood and the sour reek of his fear. "You wanted to run, Hunter," I said, my voice low and steady, audible only to him and the officer holding him. "You wanted to escape to a world where you could pretend none of this happened. But there is no escape from what you did." He tried to look away, but I grabbed his chin, forcing him to look at me. I forced him to look at the black man he had tried to kill. "You called my home a slum," I whispered. "You told Gabrielle you wanted to whitewash it. You said you wanted to sell it to civilized people." I felt him tremble under my hand. "Let me tell you about the place you are going, Hunter. You are going to a place where there are no luxury suites. There are no Italian suits. There are no country clubs. You are going to state prison." I leaned closer until my lips were inches from his ear. "In there, your money means nothing. In there, your last name means nothing. In there, you are not the predator. You are the prey. And let me tell you something about the demographics of the state penitentiary system, Hunter. You are going to be the minority. You are going to be the outsider." I let go of his chin and stepped back, wiping my hand on my coat. "You hated my skin," I said, my voice rising just enough to be heard over the rain. "You hated my history. You thought you were better than me because of the color of your face. Well, good luck with that attitude in a cage. I hope you find some civilized people in there to talk to." Hunter let out a low moan, a sound of pure despair. He knew I was right. He knew that his soft hands and his entitlement would make him a target. He knew that the racism he had hidden behind closed doors would be his undoing in a place where tribal lines were drawn in blood. "Get him out of here," Detective Miller said, his voice disgusted. The officers grabbed Hunter's arms and marched him toward the waiting police van. He stumbled, his legs barely working, his head hanging low. He looked small. He looked weak. He looked like exactly what he was, a bully who had finally picked a fight he could not win. I watched as they shoved him into the back of the van. The metal doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed in my bones. It was the sound of a coffin closing. It was the sound of justice. Tony and his men got back into their sedan and drove away, disappearing into the rainy night. They would not be charged. Hunter was too terrified to testify against them, and the police had bigger fish to fry. They had a murder conviction to secure. I stood on the loading dock for a long time, watching the taillights of the police van fade into the distance. The rain soaked through my coat, chilling me to the bone, but I did not move. I needed to feel it. I needed to feel the cold reality of the night to wash away the heat of the last week. It was over. The threat was gone. The man who had poisoned my wife and planned my death was in chains. The daughter who had betrayed me was in custody. The house was safe. The legacy was safe. But as the adrenaline faded, a profound emptiness settled over me. I had won the war, but the cost had been catastrophic. I was the last free man standing, but I was standing in a graveyard of memories. I turned and walked back into the hotel. I had to face the press. I had to talk to the lawyers. I had to start the long, painful process of dismantling the life I had built and building a new one from the wreckage. But first, I needed to sit down. I needed to rest, because tomorrow I had a grandson to find. And that was a mission that would require a different kind of strength. The destruction of Hunter was complete. Now the reconstruction of Elijah Freeman could begin. The silence inside the brownstone was heavier than any steel beam I had ever lifted. For 40 years this house had been a symphony of life. It had been filled with the sounds of Coretta humming gospel tunes in the kitchen, the thud of Gabrielle's little feet running down the hallway, and the creaking of the floorboards settling in the winter. Now it was just a structure, a shell. I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing against the bare walls. The police had finished their investigation. The crime scene tape was gone, but the stain of what happened here, the invisible residue of betrayal and poison, hung in the air like dust. I stood in the kitchen looking at the spot where the blender used to sit. I closed my eyes, and I could still see Hunter standing there smiling, mixing death into my wife breakfast. I could see Gabrielle sitting at the table watching it happen. I knew then that I could never sleep in this house again. I could never cook a meal here. I could never sit in my armchair and read a book. The foundation was cracked. Not the brick and mortar foundation I had reinforced with my own hands, but the spiritual foundation. A home is built on love and safety. This house had become a slaughterhouse of both. I called Annalise the next morning. She met me at the coffee shop down the street, looking tired but triumphant. We had won the legal battle, but now came the logistical war of dismantling a life. "Sell it," I said, pushing the deed across the table. Annalise looked at me, surprised. "Uncle Elijah, this is your masterpiece. You restored every inch of that place. It has been in the family for generations." "It is not a home, Annalise," I said, my voice steady. "It is a mausoleum. Coretta is gone. The daughter I thought I raised is gone. I cannot live in a graveyard." I told her the plan. I did not want the money from the sale. I had $42 million in the bank and 12 patents generating royalties while I slept. I did not need the cash from the brownstone. I needed to turn the site of my greatest pain into a source of healing. Put the proceeds into the trust I instructed. I want to build a center, the Coretta Freeman Legal Aid Center for the Elderly. I want a building with lawyers, social workers, and investigators. I want a place where old people can go when their families turn on them. I want to make sure that no one else has to drink poison just to keep a roof over their head. Annalise smiled, tears welling in her eyes. Aunt Coretta would have loved that. We broke ground 3 months later. I designed the structure myself. It would be modern, full of light, with reinforced steel columns that could withstand an earthquake. It would be unbreakable, just like I had to be. I spent my days on the construction site, hard hat on my head, barking orders at the contractors, checking the welds, inspecting the concrete pours. It was good to work again. It was good to build something new instead of just trying to hold up something that was falling down. The work kept the ghosts away. It kept me from thinking about the empty chair at the dinner table. But the nights were still hard. The nights were when the silence returned. I moved into a condo downtown, a place of glass and steel with no memories and no history. It was sterile. It was safe. It was exactly what I needed. 6 months passed. The seasons changed from the biting cold of that terrible winter to the soft warmth of spring. The trees in the park turned green again. Life moved on, indifferent to my tragedy. I sat on a park bench, the wood warm against my back. Across the grass, a group of children were playing soccer. Among them was a boy of 7 with bright, intelligent eyes and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. Dion, my grandson. Finding him had been the first thing I did after the arrests. It was not hard. Gabrielle had been sloppy. She had kept records of his foster placement in a box in the attic, probably as leverage for some future scheme. I had hired the best family law attorneys money could buy. When the state saw my financials, my background, and the clean record of a grieving grandfather stepping up to save his blood, they expedited the process. Dion did not know everything yet. He knew his grandmother was in heaven. He knew his mother was away for a very long time because she had done bad things. He did not know about the arsenic. He did not know about the betrayal. I would tell him one day when he was a man, but for now I just wanted him to be a boy. I wanted him to be safe. He looked over at me and waved before chasing the ball. I waved back, feeling a warmth in my chest that I thought had died with Coretta. This was the rebuilding. This was the new foundation. I reached into the pocket of my coat and pulled out a white envelope. It had arrived yesterday, forwarded from the state penitentiary. The return address was stamped in red ink. Inmate 8940, Gabrielle Freeman. I had not opened it yet. I had carried it around, feeling its weight. It felt heavy, like a brick. I knew what was inside without reading it. I knew her handwriting. I knew her voice. I took out my pocket knife and slit the envelope. I unfolded the cheap yellow legal paper. The handwriting was jagged, desperate, scrawled in pencil. Daddy, the letter began. I hope you are happy. It is hell in here. The other women are animals. I am scared, Daddy. I need money for the commissary. I need money for a better lawyer. The public defender is useless. Hunter lied about everything. It was all him. I was a victim too. Please, Daddy. You have millions. Just send me 5,000. It is nothing to you. Do not let your baby girl rot in here. You owe me that much. Love, Gabrielle. I read it twice. There was no remorse. There was no apology for Coretta. There was no mention of Dion, the son she had abandoned. There was only need, only greed, only the endless sucking void of her narcissism. She was still trying to manipulate me. She still thought she could play the victim card. She thought that because we shared DNA, I was obligated to fund her comfort while she served time for killing my wife. She was wrong. I looked at Dion running across the grass, his face turned up to the sun. That was my blood. That was my family. The boy who had never asked me for a dime. The boy who hugged me when I was sad. I took a lighter from my pocket. I did not smoke, but I carried it for moments like this. I held the corner of the yellow paper to the flame. It caught quickly, the dry paper curling and blackening. I watched the fire consume her words. I watched the pleas for money turn to ash. I watched the lies disintegrate. I dropped the burning paper onto the concrete path and watched it burn until there was nothing left but a smudge of gray dust. I crushed the ash with the heel of my boot, grinding it into the dirt. I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. It was the final structural test. The load had been applied and the bridge had held. I was not going to break. I was not going to look back. Dion ran over to the bench, breathless and sweating. Grandpa, did you see that goal? He asked, eyes shining. I saw it, son, I said, smiling. It was a perfect shot. Are you okay, Grandpa? He asked, looking at the smudge of ash on the ground. What was that? Just some trash, I said, brushing my hands off. Just some old trash I needed to get rid of. I stood up. I felt strong. My joints did not ache. The fog of grief had lifted. Come on, Dion, I said, holding out my hand. Let us go get some ice cream. He grabbed my hand, his fingers small and warm in mine. We walked out of the park, leaving the ashes behind us. I had lost a wife, I had lost a daughter, but I had found myself, and I had found the future. Family is not blood, I thought as we walked down the street. Family is not a name on a birth certificate. Family is respect. Family is loyalty. Family is the people who stand by you when the walls start to shake. Hunter and Gabrielle had made the mistake of thinking I was just an old building ready to be demolished. They thought they could strip me for parts. They did not know that I was the architect. They did not know that the foundation was made of steel. They woke up a sleeping lion thinking it was a rug, and by the time they heard the roar, it was already too late. I squeezed Dion's hand. Do not look back, I told myself. Keep building, keep climbing. The view from the top is beautiful, and the air up here is clean. My story taught me that the most dangerous mistake anyone can make is underestimating the quiet ones. We often cling to toxic family members out of obligation, mistaking shared blood for loyalty. But true family is built on respect, not entitlement. I learned that silence is not weakness. It is a strategic advantage. If you are holding on to people who drain your spirit just because they are kin, let this be your sign to cut the ties. It is better to build a new life alone than to be buried in the rubble of someone else's greed. If you believe justice was served today, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of redemption, and tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Gabrielle?